The sun bled crimson across the horizon as it slipped beneath the sea off Starfall's pale cliffs, bathing the white tower in scarlet and gold. Sir Arthur Dayne watched from the parapet, his gloved hands resting on the pommel of dawn. A blade forged from the heart of a fallen star and pale as moon-kissed milk glass. He should have taken comfort in the sword's familiar weight, but the stone beneath his boots felt treacherous, the wind ill-omened. War had ended, yet his oath-bound world lay in ruin. Prince Rhaegar lay in the dust of the trident, King Aerys burned in blackened ash, and the realm he had sworn to guard now trembled on a knife's edge. Below him, desert winds rattled diamond-shaped windows. Edric Dayne, his pale-eyed cousin, waited within the solar with parchment sealed in Baratheon wax. The stag of storms trampled a dragon in gold relief. Stannis Baratheon's terse missive was written in an unforgiving hand. Your life is forfeit. The Kingslayer's dishonor must not define the Kingsguard's memory. Present yourself in King's Landing for judgment, or be named Oathbreaker and traitor. Arthur's jaw clenched. Gods! How easily men forgot. He had followed Rhaegar to Dorne to shield Lyanna Stark in her secret bower. 7. Sworn brothers had stood for a prophecy unborn, and now only he remained. If he obeyed Stannis, a noose awaited. If he fled, his name would curdle in song. Either path seemed a slow bleeding of honor. He slid Dawn back into its scabbard and descended the stair. Inside the solar, the air smelled of parchment, salt, and candle stubs. Edric straightened as Arthur entered. Will you go, cousin? Arthur gazed at the letter one last time, then tore it in half. I will not bend my neck for men who know nothing of what passed. Then what? Edric asked. The realm roils. The trident's mud still reeks of dragonfire. Arthur's thoughts drifted northward, beyond tangled politics, beyond the reach of Stannis' quills and Robert's hammer, toward a place where a man might still live by his vows alone. The wall, he said at length. I will take the black. Edric's mouth parted. A Dayne of the Kingsguard, at the wall? A sword in service is a sword in service, no matter the color of the cloak. That night, he bade farewell to Starfall beneath a sky of wheeling stars. The Dornish sands whispered of ghosts as he rode for the Boneway, traveling only by moonlight. Each league carried him farther from the broken crown he had guarded his entire life, and nearer to a fate carved in frost and granite. At Castle Black, wind screamed through shattered merlons and whistled down the Shadow Tower's throat. November snow drifted knee-high against the old stone, muffling footsteps and memories in equal measure. Dayne the Crow-Eyed stoked a meager fire in the common hall as new-fallen brothers huddled for warmth. They noticed the newcomer first by the luminous blade. Moonbeams poured over Dawn, painting the hardwood in argent ripples. Arthur shed his travel-stained cloak, revealing mail polished dull with road dust. Lord Commander Corgyle accepted his vows in a voice brittle as hoarfrost. A king's man come north to seek forgotten honor, he rasped, studying the comet-born steel with a soldier's envy. Very well, Sir Arthur Dayne. The Night's Watch has need of every sword, even those once forged for princes. In truth, the watch needed more than steel. Recruits were sparse, food scarcer, and faith thinner than the ice that glazed the practice yard. Arthur rose each dawn, long before the horn for first light, and trained raw boys in the courtyard. His steps traced elegant arcs through drifting powder, dawn singing against practice blades. Benjen Stark watched from the stair, bemused at the grace stitched into every sidestep and parry. You dance prettier than a Bravosi, the young Stark observed one morning. Arthur's breath plumed white. Dawn demands respect, not strength alone. Benjen grinned. Best teach that lesson quickly. Half our boys barely know which end of a sword bites. Teach he did. Weeks blurred into months as Arthur's routines hardened ruffians into rangers. He earned respect through stoic patience, never raising his voice yet never yielding ground. By midwinter, Corgilly's cough deepened, and ravens croaked a single word more often than any other. Whites. Stories filtered through haunted forest. Dead men walking in the snows. Pale spiders big as hounds, eyes blue as glacier hearts. supplies that vanished, patrols that never returned, disquiet murmuring at the edges of every hearth fire. When Lord Commander Corgilly's fever finally claimed him, the brothers assembled in the old sept, torches guttering in the icy air. Ballots were scratched on shards of weirwood bark. Mallister, Royce, Thorne, Dayne Tutty. The first 3 votes scattered like blown leaves. Dawn's pale, Lord garnered name after name, until no doubt remained. Arthur Dayne knelt before a black stone altar and swore anew, "I will not father sons, nor hold lands. I will be the sword in the darkness. I will give my life for the realm of men." The brothers raised a ragged cheer as the new Lord Commander took the black-stained wheel of command. Outside, auroras shimmered green and purple across the sky, heralding fate as old as the wall itself. 9 years passed beneath those shifting lights. Spring never ventured north of Queen's Crown, and summers arrived anemic and brief. Under Arthur's discipline, the watch grew lean but lethal. Wooden palisades were replaced with stone revetments. Crumbling walkways were shored with timber from the haunted valleys east of the Bridge of Skulls. He forged alliances with the timid lords of the Gift, trading smugglers' pelts for grain and coin. Yet no matter how well he sharpened his brothers, the wall was a dam before a tide already swelling. One chill morning in the year 297 AC, a wagon cresting the King's Road delivered a boy of 14 to the Shadow Tower's gate. He came bundled and rough-spun, cheeks reddened by wind, gray eyes bright with questions unasked. Ghost, a deer-wolf white as rime, paced silently at his heel. The boy presented a sealed letter from Eddard Stark. "My son John wishes the honor of service. Treat him fair, and he will not shame the blood we share." Arthur reread the missive thrice. Eddard's quill strokes bore the weight of secrets Arthur alone could fathom. Lyanna Stark's son Nachorwar. The promise Arthur had fought to protect within the Crimson Tower all those years ago now stood before him. Skinny, determined, unaware of the heritage coiled like a dragon's tail in his veins. "Welcome, Jon Snow," Arthur greeted, voice as calm as still water. "The wall bears witness to vows stronger than blood." Jon bowed his head. "I have come to find a place, my lord." "You shall find a destiny instead," Arthur murmured. He assigned Jon to steward's duty under his direct command, a decision that raised Sir Elizur Thorne's dark eyebrows. The drillmaster sniffed. Another high-born pup to polish chamber pots instead of blades. Arthur's stare cut deeper than dawn. "A commander must learn every stone of this fortress, from the privy to the armory. He will train with you at dawn and study with me by night." Thorne grudgingly assented. Training began beneath a bleached sky. Jon learned footwork first. Small circles traced in frost. Hips aligned, shoulders loose. Arthur fought left-handed, blade flickering like winter lightning. Jon swung too hard, overcommitting, stumbling as snow screeched beneath boots. Ghost snarled encouragingly from the sideline. "Breathe," Arthur coached, steady as snowfall. "Your sword is an extension of purpose. If purpose trembles, the blade quavers." Jon exhaled slowly, meeting the older knight's eyes. "Purpose, my lord. Protection. Honor. Love." The last word lingered like unshed tears. "Choose one, and your steel will not fail." Weeks swelled into months. Jon's wrists thickened, his shoulders broadened. Yet his greatest stride came not with the sword but with commanded silence. Arthur carried him along patrols beyond the stone-marked mile, through sentinel pines heavy with icicles. They camped beneath arches of frosted branches, where night pressed close as wolf's fur. Jon listened while the Lord Commander traced constellations above. "The sword of the evening," Arthur said, pointing at 7 cold jewels. "We Danes name it thus, though it shines over all men. When I was young, I believed it watched only my house. But truth is larger than the dreams of children. Remember that, Jon. The wall stands not for Stark or Dayne or Baratheon. It stands for the living." And during those frostbound nights, Arthur spoke gently of duty's cost, of comrades lost to madness in Harrenhal's burning towers, of midnight duels for honor long since forgotten. He never named Lyanna or the babe hidden in Dorne, But something in Joan's blood quickened whenever Arthur's stories reached that far-off tower. The boy would glance sideways, feeling echoes older than memory. By the following autumn, John sparred every dawn against seasoned rangers and rarely lost. He aided Maester Aemon with ravenry at noon, studied wildling dialects at dusk, pored over black leather tomes in Arthur's Solar until midnight. Beneath the candle's glow, maps of haunted castles curled like sleeping dragons on the table between them. "What do you see?" Arthur asked one late hour, tapping his ivory pointer across the Dreadfort's jagged bay. John traced the coffin road, lips pursed. Open ground, no cover for raiders, few choke points. But look, he slid his finger northward, following a serpentine gorge. If an enemy wanted to strike Deep Lake, they'd cut through this pass by the ghost woods. Arthur smiled faintly. Very good. A commander anticipates the blade he cannot yet feel. As winter's talon tightened its grip, news of the king's visit fluttered upon raven wings. Robert Baratheon journeyed to Winterfell. Rumors buzzed of handship, of marriage alliances, of dragons long dead. Joan's face grew shadowed at breakfast fires. The realm promised glory and turmoil beyond the wall, yet he remained shackled by the black. "You fret," Arthur observed, carving smoked rabbit with measured strokes. John fed Ghost a sliver of meat. "I wonder at my brothers in the south. Robb will feast with a king whilst I shovel ice." Arthur laid down his knife. "Is that envy?" "A storm in the belly," John admitted. "Storms pass," Arthur said. "The wall endures. Purpose, remember? Which of your brothers will guard the realms of men while they dance at court?" John sat straighter. "I will." That night, dawn-hued dreams stole across Joan's sleep. Wings beating in a vaulted sky, a sword brighter than sunrise, a shadowed promise. When he woke, Arthur stood by the window, snow swirling past stone arches behind him. The older night's gaze held storms of its own. "You dream loudly," Arthur said. John rubbed sleep from his eyes. "Did I speak?" "You sang, of sorts. A single name." John flushed. "What name?" "Agar." John paled. He barely knew the name, save from songs of tragic princes and crimson rivers. Before he could ask, the horn atop the wall blared once. Riders returning. Arthur rested a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Questions can wait. The living cannot." Dayne. The first corpses arrived at dusk, borne on sledges across wind-flayed ice. Ranger Othar and leather-faced Jafer flowers, their skin pale as bone, eyes sealed by hoarfrost. Maester Aemon ordered them locked in the ice cells, yet Arthur's hackles rose. Dawn hummed uneasily in its sheath, as though the star-forged blade sensed corruption beneath brittle flesh. John volunteered for night watch outside the ice cell. Candles shivered. Rats scuttled inside wagon ruts. Hours stretched thin, taut as bowstrings. Near midnight, Arthur's corpse sat bolt upright, eyes burning cerulean flame. John staggered back, heart hammering. Jafer rose beside him, ice cracking across his cheeks like spider webs. Arthur burst through the door as dawn blazed with milky fire. The whites lurched, fingernails dripping rime. Arthur met them in a whirl of white light, blade severing joints and tendons. John wrestled a torch from the wall, plunging flame into a rent shoulder. Smoke hissed. Othar thrashed, releasing a shriek akin to ripping parchment. Fire consumed cold flesh. Silence fell. Panting, John stared at the smoldering remains. Arthur's breathing remained even. Sword angled downward, frost clinging to his greaves. "You see now," he whispered, "why the watch exists." John nodded, throat tight. "Steel and fire. And purpose," Arthur added. "The living will need a commander who remembers this night." From that moment, Joan's training doubled in intensity. By lamplight, he memorized Valyrian glyphs describing dragonglass. At dawn, he sparred using one hand bound behind his back, learning to feel rather than see. He accompanied Arthur to Hardhome on a rescue mission for starving wildlings, witnessing the bitter truth of fractured humanity, and the silent army massing in the far north. Ghosts sensed them first. Pale shapes atop ridges, blue glimmers between skeletal pines. John's breaths formed crystals in the air. Arthur set dawn ablaze beneath gray sky, its unnatural glow casting elongated shadows. They held long enough to ferry 3 boats of wildlings back to the wall, yet John tasted despair in the howling wind. The dead marched, inexorable. Snow fell thicker, as though the gods attempted to bury the world before the darkness could claim it. Arthur convened his officers within the old vaults, candles sputtering. Rattleshirt's skull mask, captured months prior, hung above the hearth like a grim herald. Maps lay strewn across pine planks. "We ride at first melt," Arthur declared, finger tracing the frost-fang spurs. "Every man able to wield flint joins the ranging. John Snow will command the rear guard." Ed Tollett blinked. "Rear guard, my lord?" "He's but a boy." "A boy who thinks with a commander's eyes," Arthur countered. "Purpose chooses the man, not his years." Later, alone in his solar, he presented John with a bundle wrapped in black velvet. John unfastened the cords, revealing a longsword of Valyrian steel, ripples dark as smoke across the fuller. A ruby glinted in the pommel, once the eye of a dragon, now a silent watchman. "It is not dawn," Arthur said, "yet it will serve you better. Lighter, swifter, tempered for killing what lies beyond the wall." John's throat tightened. "Its name?" "Morning's Edge," Arthur answered softly. "For you are the blade that will greet the dawn after this long night." John fell to one knee, the sword cradled across open palms. "I will not fail you." Arthur cupped the boy's chin. "Do not fail them, those who cannot lift a sword to save themselves. Remember that when fear claws at your heart." They rode under witch fires in the sky, auroras writhing like emerald serpents. Columns of smoke marked wildling villages razed by the dead. They found no survivors, only footprints winding deeper into frozen ravines where cold blue eyes waited. Arthur led from the front, dawn shimmering star-pale in the gloom. John trailed, scanning ridges, nerves taut as crossbow cords. The ambush fell upon them at dusk. Hundreds of wights poured from tree lines congested with ice. Steel rang, torches flared, screams echoed against glacial walls. Arthur bisected a giant with a single luminous stroke, frost steaming off dawn. John's new blade hissed black lightning as he ducked under a white shadow axe, severing spindly ankles. Fire arrows streaked overhead, igniting undead flesh in gory auroras of their own. Yet, numbers told. For every corpse they felled, 2 more climbed over twitching heaps. John's arms ached, lungs burning. A massive wildling wight crashed into him, fangs chattered inches from his face. He shoved Morning's Edge upward through clammy ribs, twisting free. Then, through swirling snow, he glimpsed Arthur, staggering, knee-buckling beneath a giant's icy mace. Dawn flickered, parried once, twice, then slipped from numb fingers. "Lord Commander!" John screamed. He vaulted over a toppled pine, carving a path to Arthur's side. Dawn lay half buried in snow, its glow dulling. John pressed his back to Arthur's, blades weaving a fragile circle. "Hold," Arthur gritted, blood streaming from a brow gash. "Always," John vowed. Fire rained suddenly from the heavens. A flight of burning arrows arced into the horde, followed by roars of charging free folk. Tormund Giant's band barreled into the flank, swinging a flaming brand the size of a sapling. Ghost lunged with him, fangs tearing. The tide wavered. John drove Morning's Edge through a skeletal king's chest. Arthur reclaimed dawn, light blazing anew. Together, they pushed outward until the last wight fell with a hiss of steam. After the battle, torches ringed the clearing. Wind keened through the dead branches. Arthur leaned heavily on Dawn, face ashen. John caught his arm. "You are wounded." "Old bones," Arthur muttered. Yet John saw crimson seeping through fur-lined leather at his ribs. They bound it tight, but fever sparked in his eyes. The trek back to the wall blurred for Arthur in fevered hallucinations. Towers of ash, a woman's voice crying in a tower, the warmth of a prince's heart. At Castle Black, Maester Aemon's poultices fought creeping frost, but the wound blackened, spider veins spreading. Jon kept vigil, fingers entwined with Dawn's ivory hilt at the bedside. One freezing dawn, Arthur's eyes cleared a moment. "Jon," he rasped, "I'm here. You must pledge, lead them. All of them. South or north, it matters not. The wall alone cannot stand if kingdoms squabble." Jon swallowed hard. "I don't have the name." Arthur smiled faintly. "A name is wind. Deeds remain. And you," he squeezed Jon's wrist with surprising strength, "are the morning the realm awaits." Snowflakes drifted through the open arrow slit, settling upon the eldritch blade. Arthur gazed at dawn a final time, his reflection warped in its milky surface. "I was called the Sword of the Morning," he whispered. "But every night ends in dawn." His breath left in a soft sigh. Jon bowed his head as the light behind Arthur's eyes dimmed. Outside, the wall groaned under the weight of ancient ice, as though mourning. Ghost lifted his muzzle and howled, long, low, mournful, echoing across battlements. Smoke curled above the pyre as dawn rested across Arthur's chest. Firelight licking pale steel. Rangers lined the yard, black cloaks snapping in northern wind. Jon stepped forward clad in simple boiled leather, morning's edge sheathed at his hip. He turned to the brothers. "This man saved my life, as he saved all of ours. The dead march. The wall stands, and so must we, together." He drew morning's edge and plunged it into the ice at his feet, the ruby pommel catching dawn's first spark on the horizon. "By order of Lord Commander Arthur Dayne, fallen but unbroken, I assume his charge until the watch decides otherwise. We will fight, or we will die, but we will do so as one." Torches dipped in salute. Flames engulfed the pyre, crackling like distant thunder. Embers rose into the dawn-tinged sky, scattering across the wall's frozen face like newborn stars, each a vow carried into the rising light. Jon turned, feeling purpose settle upon his shoulders heavier than any cloak. In the east, the sun breached a band of clouds, suffusing morning's edge with fiery radiance. The blade sang a silent chord, echo of a promise forged from the bones of dead stars and living men's hopes. And somewhere beyond the frost-bitten horizon, blue eyes watched, patient and eternal, as a new Lord Commander rose with the morning. Kai, Kai. Ash from Arthur's pyre drifted high into the violet morning, settling upon the wall's ice like black snowfall. Through that veil, Jon Snow trudged toward the vault beneath the Shadow Tower, where the watch stored its most guarded relics: dragon-glass daggers, mold-scarred scrolls, and blades surrendered by fallen brothers. Ghost padded beside him, tail low, sensing the tension wound around Jon's shoulders. He descended a spiral stair, chiseled centuries ago. Frost coated the handrail, a thin rind that cracked beneath his glove. Torchlight guttered at the corridor's end and revealed a heavy oak door banded with iron. Jon pressed the ancient key Arthur had bestowed upon him before the ranging into the frozen lock. Tumblers groaned. When the door opened, a hush breathed out, cool and papery, like the inside of a tomb. Wooden racks lined the chamber, each slot labeled in crabbed Maester Valen script that no one living could quite decipher. Jon stepped between shelves, his torch revealing bundles of arrowheads glimmering volcanic black. Somewhere in this vault, Arthur had hinted, lay more than obsidian, knowledge sequestered from times before the wall. Jon searched 2 rows before finding a leather satchel bound with a strip of pink-tinted direwolf hide. A parchment tag bore a single sigil, a 7-pointed star inscribed with a single word: Daybreak. He knelt, unfastened the strap, and drew out a slender wooden case. Inside, wrapped in dusty green silk, slumbered Dawn's twin, a shorter sword, half again the length of a large dirk, but forged of the same milky meteoric steel, its fuller etched with runes that shimmered faint gold. Jon's breath caught. His fingertips tingled as he touched the flat of the blade. It hummed with the subdued song Dawn had sung outright. Softer, secret. A folded parchment rested beneath the silk. He recognized Arthur's penmanship before opening it. If I should fall, keep this hidden until purpose demands light. Daybreak is not for war alone, but for the promise that comes after. Should the boy born of frost and morning star claim his name, he will need a flame the darkness dares not swallow. John's heart hammered. The boy born of frost and morning star. Was there any doubt whom Arthur meant? He traced the runes again, feeling history rise between each glowing line. The sword seemed meant for a hand not yet grown, no longer his own perhaps. His gaze drifted toward Ghost, whose red eyes glinted back like coals amid snow. Purpose. He closed the case, rewrapped it, and secreted the parcel in his own quarters, beneath the floorboards behind his cot. Words whispered in his skull, not Arthur's voice, but a memory deeper, older, like the echo of a harp in a tower. He shook it off when the horn for council sounded. The shield hall smelled of pine pitch and boiled oats. Brothers packed the benches, their black cloaks shedding frost. At the head table, John stood flanked by Benjen Stark and Sir Eleazar Thorne, whose eyes shone like muddy glass. "We've 20 barrels of lamp oil left," Donalnoy announced. Arms folded over a smith's apron dusted in soot. "If we burn it for white pyres, we'll have none come midwinter." "We'll need the fire more than ale," piped Ed Tollett from the benches. "Unless you fancy drinking whites under the table." A nervous laugh rippled. John raised a hand. "The wall won't stand on hopes and stale barley. We secured 3 wagons of nag's piss from Molestown. Save it for trade. What we lack is dragon glass. There's rumor of an old quarry up the Broken Arm. I'll lead a party to dig before first snow." Eleazar's lips twisted. "Our Lord Commanding Steward still chases children's tales." John met his stare. "Dragonglass killed 2 whites before your eyes." "And steel killed 20, Eleazar snapped. "We'd sooner mine iron than chase black glass across snow." Benjen intervened. "Dragonglass is lighter to carry, quicker to set alight. I'll ride with the Lord Commander." Murmurs of assent followed Benjen's support. Few men argued with a Stark in the north. Eleazar glowered but nodded. John tapped the table. "I want volunteers. Rangers swift on skis, builders to shape crates, stewards for provisions. We leave in 3 days. Until then, double watches along the wall. Reports say Mance Raider moves. If he drives his host south, the dead will follow in the wildling's wake. We face 2 storms, not one." As the meeting dispersed, Samuel Tarley hurried to Joan's side, cheeks flushed. "I copied a map from Maester Aemon's archives. It matches your quarry. There's mention of obsidian seams and..." "Oh." He lowered his voice. "Dragon bones." John blinked. "Dragon bones north of the neck. Buried in basalt, if the maester's notes are right." John's pulse quickened. Bones meant perhaps eggs, or at least fossilized marrow. Fuel for fire. "Show me after supper." Sam nodded vigorously. Eleazar shouldered past them, cloak whirling. John watched him stalk away, a caged hound aching for a throat to tear. That night John ventured to Maester Aemon's rookery. Lanterns cast pendulum shadows among cooing birds. The old man sat wrapped in furs, milk-white eyes turned toward the smell of Joan's torch. "Arthur foresaw your burden," Aemon wheezed as John approached. "He asked I guide you when the questions grew heavy." John knelt. "I found something. A sword of star metal. He left no instructions but to keep it secret." "Dawn's daughter," Aemon whispered, voice soft as falling ash. "The blade was forged when Arthur's sister, Ashara, still laughed on Starfall's terraces. She believed the realm would need a pair of sentinels, one for the dusk, one for the dawn. But why hide it?" "Because metal invites greed," Aemon replied. "Because prophecy, like wildfire, burns those who grasp too eagerly." John braced elbows on knees. "Maester, what did Arthur truly believe? That prophecy of a prince?" He never spoke plainly. Aemon's pupils wobbled milky, within sightless orbs. Arthur served a dream older than dragons, that ice and fire would meet in flesh and wield a storm-born sword against eternal night. He thought Rhaegar might be the prince. And then, perhaps Rhaegar's son. Jon's breath left him. Aemon reached to pat his hand, fingertips skeletal. I know the truth you carry, though you know it not yourself. Fear not its weight. Know only that light must meet darkness in equal measure. Ben Dawar. Jon pressed his lips together. Secrets prickled beneath his skin like frostbite. He rose before words could betray him. Thank you. As he turned to leave, a rook fluttered from the rafters, landing on Aemon's shoulder. The bird croaked a single word. Daybreak. Dawn's third day found Jon astride a lank, grey garron, bound east with 15 rangers, 10 builders. Sam and Benjen White D. The sky hung pewter. Snow, not yet falling, but imminent. They skirted along the milkwater, river ice popping like distant musket fire. Ghost padded ahead, ghostlier than the mist. 2 leagues short of the quarry, they detected Wildling's sign. A black-boned elk staked upright, intestines weighted in crimson icicles, warning sigil of the Weeper. Benjen cursed softly. He's not known for mercy. We might be watched. Jon signaled silence and pressed onward, wary. The quarry yawned beneath a ridge, half drowned in snowmelt. Black glass glinted where slabs had sheared off, like mirrors to a starless sky. Builders erected windbreaks, while rangers posted lookouts. Sam, bundled like a black bear cub, clambered over rubble with quill and parchment, taking frantic notes. By noon, they had filled 6 crates with rough obsidian shards. Jon's back ached, palms bleeding. He knelt to pry a wedge from frozen mud, and his pick struck hollow. The ground rang. Carefully they cleared debris, revealing a cavern mouth sealed by calcified roots. Within, a stale gust exhaled. Warm, oddly sulfuric. Lanterns in hand, Jon, Benjen, and Sam descended a corkscrew fissure. The passage widened into a grotto shot through with purple crystals. At its heart lay the skeleton of a dragon. Wings collapsed, ribs arching like cathedral beams. Its skull jutted from the earth, one giant eye socket filled with ice. Within that pit nestled 3 oblong stones, dull gray, veined gold, copper, and umber. 7 hells, Benjen murmured. Eggs. Jon's pulse pounded. Warmth baked the cavern despite winter's choke. Steam rose from fissures around the fossil. Sam extended a trembling hand. They feel warm. Jon pulled him back. We take them. Wrap them. But discreetly. Elizar will balk if he learns. Now. Benjen hefted the first egg into a padded satchel, nostrils flaring at its unexpected heft. Jon sized the second. Heat radiated through his gloves. The third he passed to Sam, who handled it as though it might stir and bite. Lantern shadows leapt. A crunch echoed from the tunnel behind. Jon whirled, hand flying to morning's edge. Figures blocked the exit, gaunt wildlings in patchwork furs. At their fore stood a man whose cheeks were carved in bleeding tears, the Weeper. Well now, the raider growled, voice gravel. Crows digging up shiny stones. Hand them over. Benjen stepped forward. We came for rock, not war, but we won't yield. The Weeper drew a hatchet, its blade chipped obsidian. Yield or die. Jon lifted his voice. We all die if the dead rise. Let us pass. Share the bounty, and stand together when the storm comes. Laughter rattled from the wildling ranks. One spat. The Weeper's bared teeth looked iron in the lantern light. Steel scraped. Arrows knocked. Jon exhaled, tasting iron and fear. Remember purpose, he whispered to himself and lunged. What followed was a blur. Axes ringing, sparks spraying off morning's edge, Benjen's longsword cleaving shoulder to spine. Sam crouched behind the fossil, clutching the eggs like a terrified hen. Ghost tore a raider's throat. White coat speckled scarlet, The Weeper met Jon stroke for stroke, his hatchet clanging against Valyrian steel, each clash jarring Jon's bones. Then a shriek split the cavern. High, shrill, not human. Frost gusted past, extinguishing torches. Blue light flared from the tunnel mouth. A figure tall as a giant yet slender, armored in ice that caught the lantern glow like starlight. A walker. The raiders forgot their quarrel, stumbling back. The Weeper's face paled under blood crust. The walker advanced. Spear crystalline, frost blossoming where it stepped. Jon felt warmth bleed from his marrow. Morning's edge sang low, as though waking in answer. Jon stepped between the walker and Sam. Benjen joined him, lips taut. The walker tilted its head, eye sockets blazing pale flame. It spoke in a tongue colder than moonlit steel. A shard of frost exploded from its spear, shearing through a wildling's chest. Panic erupted. Jon lunged. Morning's edge met the spear, neither shattering, a clang like worlds colliding. Pain lanced his arm. Benjen swung, but the walker sidestepped, answering with a backhand that launched him 10 paces into stone. Ghost sprang, jaws locking on the walker's calf. Ice cracked beneath canine fury, but the creature scarcely flinched. Jon glimpsed Sam fumbling for dragonglass, knife point glimmering. Jon finted high, ducked under a sweep, then drove Morning's edge upward, slicing across the walker's wrist. Frost split. The spear clattered on crystal. The walker recoiled. Blue blood smoked where Valyrian steel kissed otherworldly flesh. With a hiss, it summoned frost that coiled around Jon's ankles. A second spear materialized in its grip from gelling air. Before it could thrust, sand darted behind and plunged obsidian into its spine. Light detonated, blue shards, shrieking steam. The smell of melted snow and rotten flowers. The walker shattered. Silence crashed like a wave. Shivering, Jon surveyed the carnage. Wildlings huddled wide-eyed against cave walls. Rangers panting, Benjen groaning but alive. Frost crackled across Morning's edge. He wiped it clean. Jon faced the Weeper. We bleed the same. The dead do not care who wears a cloak of black or brown. The wildling glanced at the shattered walker, its fragments already melt into nothing. He spat. Perhaps, but I do. Yet his tone lacked conviction. Jon extended a dragonglass dagger. Take this. When you see eyes of winter, stab and burn. The Weeper hesitated, then snatched it. He gestured for his survivors to retreat, leaving the rangers unmolested. As the last wildling vanished, Sam slumped, dragon egg still clutched. Benjen pushed upright, ribs likely bruised. If your diplomacy keeps saving us, we may live until moonrise. Jon sheathed Morning's edge. Or die of talking. Pack up. We march before more arrive. Snow greeted them upon ascent, flakes fat and wet. By dusk they approached the wall, crates dragged by tired garrons. Ghosts circled warily. Torches twinkled atop battlements and Elazar's voice drifted down. Sharper than the wind. Late by a day and laden like mummers. What trinkets have you wasted lives to fetch? Jon ignored the jibe. Open the gates. Inside the Shadow Tower's yard, men gathered, curiosity bright as lanterns. Jon ordered the builders to store the crates under guard. He left Sam to deliver the eggs to Maester Aemon, sealed behind his rookery door. Only when Jon peeled off sodden gloves by the hearth did Elazar confront him fully. You bring wildling weapons and false hopes, the knight sneered. While you dug in dirt, ravens came. King Robert is dead. A boy sits the Iron Throne, and Lannisters pull his strings. Bedim. Jon's stomach pitched. Robert dead. The realm's chaos would deepen. He steadied his voice. The Iron Throne won't matter if the wall falls. It matters to the men whose purses pay for oats, Elazar countered. Gold flows south, not north. Jon felt the council's weight in Arthur's empty chair. The watch stands apart from crowns. We ask those who rule to remember their debts to the living. Elieser's smile was thin as a knife. A letter also arrived from Winterfell. Lord Eddard imprisoned. Traitor, they say. Ben? Shock stirred the room. Jon's heart hammered. His father? No. His uncle. Ned Stark, loyal as stone? Lies, all lies. He clenched his fists. Elieser savored his stricken look. See where oaths to shadows lead? Elieser concluded, sweeping his cloak aside. He stalked out, boots echoing. Benjen's hand squeezed Jon's shoulder. Lions play at shadows. We'll learn the truth. Jon nodded, fury simmering beneath duty. For now, we need arrowheads forged from that glass. Donalnoy rumbled behind them. My fires are yours, Lord Commander. Though I'll need charcoal. Barrels of it. Dragon glass is brittle, must be knapped, not smelted. Then so. Teach who you can, Jon said. Every hand might shape an edge. Moonless night draped the wall when Jon slipped to the rookery. Sam crouched beside Aemon's cot, candle trembling. The maester's breaths came shallow. He tried to rise, Sam whispered. Said the winds carried doom. Jon sat. Any change? His fever burns. Jon placed a damp cloth on Aemon's brow. The old man's lids fluttered. Egg. I dreamed of egg. Jon squeezed his skeletal hand. Rest, maester. Aemon settled, whisper fading. Jon stepped to the hearth where the dragon eggs rested in a brass cradle, warmth pulsing through the metal. Sparks cracked in the grate, though the coals were old. He reached for the copper-veined egg, marveling at intricate scales. As his palm contacted the shell, the surface glowed faint, veins kindling ember red. Startled, he jerked back. The glow faded. Sam saw. Hi. Does it respond to you? I felt it. Listen. Sam wiped sweaty palms on his tunic. Old Valyrian scrolls speak of blood and binding words. My blood is stark. There is no dragon's fire in me. Sam tilted his head. Your mother. We've never spoken. Jon shook him silent. I wear the black. Nothing else matters. Yet as he left, he felt warmth linger, outlawed hope curling like a hatchling beneath rib cage. Weeks flowed as winter rivers, slow on the surface, swift beneath. Arrowheads filled chests, builders reinforced gates with ironwood. Jon dispatched small sorties to Eastwatch to barter dried cod for salt, to the Shadow Tower for pitch. Rumors seeped through Raven's wings. Ned Stark confessed to treason under threat against his daughters. King Joffrey beheaded him in the square. Jon read the words once, twice, then locked himself in Arthur's old solar. He smashed a stool to splinters, breath ragged. When Dawn's case thudded underfoot, he froze. The pale blade dormant within its box like unspoken promise. Benjen found him hours later. They spoke little. Grief burned, but duty stoked hotter. Snow deepened. Nights grew long as memories. Strange lights danced beyond the frostfangs. Auroras pinned like celestial banners. With each spectral wave, Jon felt the world strain, as if on the verge of shattering. One dawn, horn blasts shredded sleep. Free, white walkers. Jon buckled armor, grabbed morning's edge and sprinted to the wall's top. Shapes advanced across the plain below. Whites in ragged ranks, led by 3 walkers, astride dead horses, hooves ghostly flame. Behind them, the forest moved with tens of thousands, a sea of frozen faces. Elieser Thorne screamed orders. Barrels of pitch were hauled. Archers lined merlons. Jon stood between crenels, frost biting tears from his lashes. This was no raid. It was the beginning. Benjen joined him, sighting down a dragon glass-tipped arrow. His smile was tight. Remember storms pass. Might be a long one. Then Sawa. Jon nodded. We hold the wall. Whatever lies beyond, the realm must have time. The White Walkers halted within bowshot. One raised its spear skyward. Frost crackled up the wall, thin as spider silk but racing fast. Stone popped. Ice bloomed. Men shouted. Jon roared back, "Loose!" Arrows hissed. Black fletchings, glass tips. 2 arrows found a walker, striking shoulder and hip, both shattered on the armor of rime. A third pierced a horse's skull. Beast folded silently. The walker toppled, rolled, then rose as if joints hinged by ice. Drums thundered behind. Giant-driven rams approaching the gate. Builders hauled burning logs to drop. John grabbed a horn, voice hoarse. Builders, fire drop, rangers flanks, stewards to reserves. A tremor ran underfoot. The wall shuddered. Cracks snaked across the roadway. John's heart lurched. If the wall fell, he sprinted to a ballista, yanked free the tar cloth, and sighted one walker framed against pallid snow. Engine cranked. Sam winced behind the lever. John breathed out. Felt the world narrow. He released. The bolt, tipped in dragon glass, howled downward, trailing smoke. It struck the walker's breast. Light burst. Shards flying. The creature dissolved, searing azure flame. Its steed collapsed in shards like fragile glassware. A cheer erupted, smothered quickly by renewed dread. The remaining walkers raised dead hands. Snow gusted upward, obscuring vision. When it cleared, the fallen walker recoalesced from snow particles. First a skull, then ribs knitting from frost. Armor sheeting across like flower petals of ice. Terror rippled, bows sagged. John slammed the ballista lever again. They can be killed. We must burn the fragments. He bellowed to torchmen. Flames arced from pitch buckets, splashing onto the reformed walker. Black smoke spiraled. The creature shrieked, ice melting to slush, form finally collapsing. Ghost howled high above as if urging them to remember the simplest truth: fire first. Below, the massive white host advanced. First ranks lurching into a ravine littered with jagged stakes the builders had erected months earlier. Bodies impaled but crawled forward, pushing brethren over their backs. The living flung clay pots of flaming oil. Bursts of orange ripped gaps in the horde. Yet for every corpse burning, 10 pressed on. Eliezer joined John at the parapet, face ashen. They will batter the gate. We can't hold eternal. John gripped morning's edge. Then we buy hours, not eternity. Signal Eastwatch. Send ravens to every realm. Tell them the dawn bleeds. Eliezer swallowed resentment, nodded, and ran. The White Walkers regrouped beyond arrow range. 6 now. Glimmering alabaster blades raised. They planted slender staves in the snow. Each rifted the sky. Cracks of lightning without thunder. Wind hammered the wall. Ice sleeted in sheets so thick, men lost sight of their own hands. John's voice shredded calling orders. Scores of whites climbed the wall's face. Ice axes, bone talons. Brothers thrust spears through gaps. Some were dragged screaming over the side. John severed a corpse's wrist, booted another's skull to icy powder. Blood froze on his gauntlets. Then, a thunderous creak. The southern gatehouse, foundation of black oak, splintered under a giant's frozen club. The portcullis shivered. Dayne led builders with barrels of wildfire Arthur had hidden at John's order, gleaned from abandoned caches at Eastwatch. They rolled casks through tunnels beneath the gatehouse. Dayne held a torch, beard crusted white. If this goes wrong, John clasped his forearm. The wall will stand on your fire. Dayne managed a grin. And your stones, Lord Commander. John withdrew as builders hammered wedges, lighting fuses. The ground shook from battering. With a roar, the portcullis gave. Giants pressed through, flanked by whites packed tight as sardines. Dayne hurled his torch. Flame licked fuses trailing green sparks. John felt more than heard the shudder. A wall of emerald hell erupted, surging through the tunnel, engulfing giants and dead alike. Wildfire roared so bright, night blinked to midday. The blast cracked the wall's interior face. But the gatehouse held. Plumes climbed skyward, casting green auroras over snow. Brothers cheered raggedly. John leaned on the parapet, lungs afire with smoke. Then, a chill worse than before, seeped into his bones. From the smoke's heart, strode a figure taller than any walker yet seen. armor wrought of interlocked diamonds of ancient ice, each facet reflecting war's chaos. In its gauntleted hands rested a sword of utter darkness, no reflection, no gleam, devouring the wildfire's green. Ice cold as the void locked on Jon. Benjen whispered, "The Night King." Silence conquered the field. Dead ranks halted behind their sovereign. The Night King lifted his sword. The wildfire's flames guttered, shrinking as if consumed by a colder fire. Brothers on the parapet cussed prayers. Jon felt his heartbeat slow, breath freezing at his lips. Morning's edge at his side thrummed, ruby glinting. The eggs in the rookery pulsed warm in memory. A whisper brushed Jon's mind, Arthur's voice, or another. Light the dawn. Jon turned to Benjen. "I must reach the rookery. You'll never get past the dead." "I have to." Benjen's jaw tightened. "Go. I'll hold the parapet." Jon sprinted, ghost at his heels. Down staircases slick with ice, through corridors where injured men groaned, up spiral tiers to the rookery tower. Racing past Sam's stout form, he burst into the chamber. Maester Aemon lay still, waxen lips parted. Sam knelt, tears falling. Sam sobbed. Jon squeezed Sam's shoulder. "His watch has ended. Grief could wait. The living could not." He strode to the cradle. The eggs glowed softly, as though they sensed crisis. He reached both hands out, palms over copper and gold-veined shells. Heat flared, intense, searing. Pain lanced his palms, but he refused to flinch. He closed eyes, searching inner darkness. Images swirled, a red tower, Lyanna's tears, Rhaegar's harp, Arthur Dayne kneeling. Flames spiraled through memory and blood, pooling at his heart. Eggshell cracked. A piercing note, like a chord from a harp of fire, rang through the rookery. Sam gasped. The copper egg split. Magma-bright fissures streaked. A claw emerged, onyx talon tipped in silver. From the gold-sheened egg, another crack answered. Heat suffused the tower. Ravens shrieked and flapped. Jon forced breath through seared lungs. Third egg pulsed, unbroken. Sweat poured despite the freezing air. The hatchlings clawed free. One copper bronze with a smoky frill. One golden cream with crimson wings. They tumbled onto Jon's forearms. Steam whirling from newborn scales. They opened mouths and shrieked. Sound pure, defiant. Jon felt tears scald his eyelids. "Fly," he whispered, voice raw. The dragons cocked heads, eyes glowing ember. Then they leapt, wings beating unsteady. Climbed the stair of air through shattered skylight, out into the winter dark. Sam's mouth gaped. By the 7. How? Jon tore a tapestry down to wrap the smoldering third egg. Not how. Why? Hope answers fear. He shouldered the bundle. "I need torches, pitch. Every arrow tipped with dragon glass. We fight beneath dragonfire before dawn." Sam nodded, still stunned, and blew the brass horn by the door. 3 blast, command recall. Jon emerged on the battlements as the dragonlings banked overhead, gold and bronze streaks trailing cinders. Brothers below shouted awe. The dragons swooped low, exhaling wisps of flame, not full jets, but hot enough to blister white flesh. Corpses ignited. The smell of burnt rot filled the air. The Night King gazed skyward. In one gesture, he raised a gloved palm. A spear of ice coalesced. He hurled it with impossible speed. The bronze hatchling banked aside. A grazing strike sheared wing membrane, sending it spiraling. Jon's heart lurched. The gold dragon shrieked, diving at the Night King, only to be repelled by a column of black frost. Jon lifted Morning's edge. Draw their gaze. Benjen roared beside him as rangers loosed arrows aflame. Jon sprinted along the walkway, shouting for the gold hatchling. Kyrell. His mind named it without thought. Kyrell veered to his call, banking toward the parapet. Jon vaulted onto a crenel, just as the dragon hammered down, claws locking stone. Heat shimmered off scales. Jon placed one burned palm upon its sinewed neck. A bolt of sensation tethered them. Fear, fury, fire. Below, the Night King strode toward the gatehouse, whites parting. Benjen shouted, but his voice drowned in roars of battle. Jon climbed atop Kiral's neck. The hatchling unfurled tattered wings, talons clenching stone, then launched. Jon clutched ridges of gold scale, wind tearing tears from his eyes. They soared over the wall, cold cut like knives, but Kiral's heat shielded him. Ahead, the Night King raised his sword. Jon leaned forward. Flame gushed from Kiral's throat, white-hot, untested. It splashed across White's blackening armor, yet when it bathed the Night King, frost boiled off his cloak, but body remained, sword raised to split the fire like a river. Kiral faltered. The Night King gestured. Shards of ice formed guns of hail, slamming into the dragon's torso. Jon howled, feeling each impact through the bond. He urged ascent. Kiral spiraled upward, wheeling over the wall. Below, the bronze hatchling, bruised but airborne, joined, trailing smoke from torn wing. Jon's mind raced. Valyrian steel harmed walkers. Dragonfire hindered. What of both combined? He slid forward along Kiral's neck to the base of the skull ridge. Morning's edge clenched. The dragon banked again, arrowed down. Jon sighted the black-armored sovereign. Now, Jon shouted, though words vanished in wind. Kiral dove. Flame erupted. The bronze dragon, Mirax, the name burst. Synchronized, weaving flames so both torrents braided, hotter than before. The Night King raised his sword in defense. At the fiery nadir, Jon leapt. He fell through searing cloud. Silhouette of the Night King enlarging. He oriented the sword downward, grip tight. Time slowed. He saw the pale glow of those eyes, the black blade rising to meet him, the hush of wind swirling ash. Morning's edge struck the Night King's crown. Soundless explosion of light, scarlet, citrine, ghost-white, blinded the field. A shockwave rippled, throwing Whites like rag dolls, cracking ice lakes miles away. Brothers on the wall staggered. The dragons shrieked overhead. When brightness ebbed, snowflakes drifted in lazy spirals. Where the Night King had stood remained a crater, its rim fused glass, silver steam curling. At the center knelt Jon, sword driven through opaque shard of hard ice. His clothing smoldered, hair singed. He gasped, lungs aflame, but alive. All along the plain, Whites collapsed as strings cut, bodies inert. A groan passed through the living ranks, a mix of disbelief and unfiltered relief. Some wept, others laughed hysterically. Benjen half slid, half fell down the wall's icy slope to reach Jon, whose vision blurred. Morning's edge lay across his knees, steel dulling as though the blade itself sighed. Killed him, Benjen breathed, awestruck. Jon swayed. Ghost loped from the gate tunnel, whining, nose nudging his chest. Above, Kiral and Mirax circled, cries triumphant but uncertain, as though seeking guidance. Jon rasped, "It's not done." Benjen frowned. The dead fell. The wall cracked. Jon pointed. Fissures spidered across the western face, where the walkers' earlier assault had reached deepest. Settling snow disguised structural grief, but the fractures spread. If the wall broke now, southern realms lay open. They hauled Jon onto a litter and retreated behind the gate as builders scrambled to shore cracks with timber braces. Donal Noye barked orders. Eliezer directed archers to set fire to White remains. Sam tended injuries, face smudged with ash. Within the shield hall, Jon slumped in Arthur's old chair, cloak battered, armor half melted. Silence ruled, broken by crackle of hearthfire and distant moans. Eliezer stepped forward, stiff. "I misjudged you." He knelt. "My sword is yours, Lord Commander." Others followed, red-eyed rangers, soot-blackened builders, even the children of the kitchens. Knees dipped like wheat in wind. Jon swallowed. "Rise. We have won dawn. not day, and the night will come again. Dragons hatch tonight, but they are hatchlings still. We must forge kingdom-wide alliance. Send ravens to Winterfell, White Harbor, Dragonstone, the Eyrie, even King's Landing. We need every anvil beating, every hearth burning, every heart united. Bah! Eliezer rose. Benjen, Jon said, voice scraping. Ride south with 10 men. Find Robb. Find my brothers, and tell them Ned Stark's son guards the realm still. Benjen clasped his arm. Sam stepped to the chair, hands shaking. The egg! Jon unwrapped the last shell, veins flickering under cooling embers. It had not cracked, but heat throbbed steady. Jon looked upon it, remembering the prophecy Aemon hinted at, a song of ice and fire. He saw his father's, no Rhaegar's, face, the truth unsung. He closed the shell in thick furs. This one stays until it chooses its own dawn. The hall nodded. Ghost settled at his feet. Kiral's silhouette swooped outside smoked windows, bronze wings glimmering red light. Mirax followed, keening lullaby to sleeping men. Jon exhaled, feeling weight of worlds. From the parapet came a cry. The auroras rolled once more, vivid green ribbons splitting to reveal a crackling scarlet comet. It arced above, trailing sparks across the newborn dawn. Omen of blood and rebirth. Jon rose, leaning on morning's edge. He walked to the doorway and looked upon the wall, cracked but standing, luminous under comet glow. Snowflakes melted on his cheeks. Arthur's voice murmured through memory. Choose protection, honor, love. He chose all three, standing between darkness and the living as Sword of the Dawn reborn. Behind him, men began to sing, an old song of the Watch, verses forgotten by most. Their voices, ragged, hoarse, indomitable, rose, echoing off ice and timber, joining dragon calls and wolf howls, in a chorus that dared the long night to return. For now, light held. Oh, Ka. The comet burned across the vault of early morning like a rent in creation, leaving a tail that shimmered red gold against the paling stars. Its radiance spilled over the wall's fissured crown, casting slanted shadows that danced along timbers and ice. Jon Snow rested a hand on cracked merlons, feeling the ancient rampart tremble beneath the burden of its own wounds. Far below, the ruined plain stretched white and silent. A charred smear marked the place where wildfire had roared, and beyond lay carpets of unmoving corpses already crusted with hoarfrost. Steam still curled from pockets where the embers of Donal Noy's inferno smoldered beneath ash. Cold wind teased Jon's singed hair. His cloak, patched in 3 places where ice shards had sliced through wool, fluttered like a lamed banner. Morning's edge was sheathed at his side, but its pommel, ruby set aglow by comet light, throbbed as if the sword had a heartbeat of its own. Beside Jon, Ghost watched the horizon, hackles high, muzzle flecked with ice crystals. Wings beat overhead. Kiral and Mirax wheeled, trailing twin rings of smoke that faded into the dawn sky. Their cries rolled down the wall's flank. Hoarse, guttural, hungry. Benjen Stark emerged from the stairwell, cheeks raw with windburn, eyes bloodshot. He leaned heavily on the lintel, one arm hugged tight to bruised ribs. Ravens launched. White Harbor, the Dreadfort, Bear Island, Carhold, even sent one to River Run. Whether lions let it through, who can say? Mendero. Jon nodded. Good. We'll need answers quicker than winter sets its teeth. He glanced east, where blue-black storm clouds boiled over the Bay of Seals. How fares the gate? Builders brace it with ironwood staves, Benjen said, wiping snow from his brow. The crack in the inner arch widened a finger's width, but Noy thinks it'll hold if the temperature doesn't drop another 10 degrees. 10 degrees will come before week's end, Jon muttered. A shout drifted up from the vault walkway, Sir Alistair Thorne directing a knot of stewards who shuffled toward the library tower with crates of dragon-glass arrowheads. He met Joan's eye from across the parapet, no defiance in his gaze, only a flinty acceptance that chilled Jon more than the wind. Men changed in war's furnace, some shattered, some tempered. Thorn, it seemed, had found a purpose harder than spite. Benjen crossed his arms. They'll whisper songs about the fight last night. About dragons hatching in freezing towers and the Night King shattered by a bastard with a crimson sword. MMD. Let them sing when the work is done, Jon said. His throat felt raw from smoke and dragonfire. How many brothers do we count? 163 fit to fight, Benjen answered. 34 wounded. A dozen dead. Less than I feared, more than we can spare. And there's a line of free folk outside the gatehouse, unarmed, asking terms. Jon tightened his grip on the wall's rim. The Weeper kept his word. So far. Benjen's breath fogged between them. Tormund brought 36, children and old ones mostly. Says he'll stand with us if we swear safe passage for the clan mothers. Jon exhaled. He remembered Tormund's burning brand, the wildlings' desperate charge at Hardhome. We take every living soul willing to fight. They patrol outside the wall for now. Cook fires aft of the Shadowgate. Benjen's brow quirked. Thorn will gnash his teeth. Then he'll gnash them while stacking obsidian, Jon said. Any rider from Winterfell? Raven arrived just before dawn. Robb Stark crowned king in the north. Marches south to River Run to clash with Lannisters. No word of our battle. Duh. Jon closed eyes against a surge of grief for Ned Stark, but the ache sharpened into iron resolve. I'll send Kyrell to Winterfell. Dragon wings carry news faster than ravens. Kyrell can't carry you yet, Benjen warned. His wings are still soft at the joints. I won't risk him. A scroll bound to his talon will do. Jon gazed at the bronzed hatchling circling overhead, still unsteady but stronger by the hour, as though the comet's fire poured life into his veins. And Mirax goes with him, twice the chance of message arriving. Benjen's grin flashed, brief and weary. The realm will believe itself haunted when 2 dragons wheel over Moat Cailin. Jon turned from the parapet. The shield hall windows glowed with forge light. He descended the frostlick stair where a score of rangers worked by torchlight, stripping armor from fallen wights. Bones clattered onto sledges bound for pyres. The smell, burnt fat laced with rot, coated the back of Jon's tongue. But he paused among them, sweating men who nodded grim respect before returning to their grisly task. He recognized each face now. Gren's stubborn jaw, Pipe's crooked grin even in exhaustion, Dolorous Ed's gloomy mutter about the afterlife charging rent. These men had stood atop an ice cliff against the embodiment of oblivion, and none fled. Pride surged like new blood in Jon's veins. He crossed the yard to the smithy, where Donal Noy hammered glowing iron into spear tips for wildling hafts. Sparks crackled, illuminating the smith's ruined arm, a stump ending in scarred flesh, and his good arm rippled cords of muscle as he drove strokes. Lord Commander, he grunted without looking up. Donal. Jon leaned against a timber post. Sweat glistened beneath the older man's brow. How long before we finish a gross of those? 2 days if coal holds. We're low. Been mixing peat. Doesn't keep heat. Noy quenched the iron, steam swirling. Wildfire blast took half my charcoal stores. We'll need to cut dwarf pine from Queenscrown. Arrange a sled team. Stewards and free folk. Jon watched orange light play across anvil steel. How soon can you reforge Dawn's shards? Noy wiped his mouth with the back of his wrist. Star metal ain't common iron. Needs dragon flame and a smith who can coax it. I'm a soldier's hammer, not a conjurer. Then? Jon's mind flicked to Kyrell's fiery breath. You'll have dragon flame by dusk. Noy's eyes widened, then narrowed with the measuring appraisal of a veteran who had once forged Baratheon steel on Dragonstone's volcanic forges. Bring the creature to the south yard, and pray the little beastie knows friend from fuel. Jon clasped his shoulder and left. He passed Eliezer Thorn drilling a file of wildlings and black brothers mixed, ragged furs beside patched leathers, shields scavenged from white corpses. Thorn's barked commands carried no derision. The Weeper stood at the far end, silent, eyes red-rimmed, dragon-glass dagger at his belt. When Jon neared, the wildling leader met his gaze without bow or sneer, just a curt incline of the head. Jon returned it. Alliances forged in fire were still brittle, best temper them slowly. Inside the library, Sam hunched over a table strewn with parchment, Maester Aemon's quills, and a shard of ice that glimmered with pale inner light, the remnant of the Night King's icy crown. Heat from a brazier failed to melt it. Sam's quill scratched furiously, copying glyphs from one scroll onto another. "Any luck?" Jon asked. Sam jumped, ink blotting his sleeve. I think so. The Valyrian in Aemon's notes suggests these glyphs bind ice to spirit. If we understand them, we might learn how the walkers renew themselves after shattering. Jon eyed the shard. Strange filaments twisted within the ice, like veins of silver thread. We destroyed his form. But did we destroy him? I'm not certain, Sam whispered. The ice was his body, but perhaps not his essence. If that essence finds new shape, then we face him again. Jon exhaled. Decode faster than he can reform. Sam gulped. Jon placed the shard in a lead-lined box Noy had fashioned and latched it tight. "Do not open unless I stand here." Sam nodded. Outside, clouds over the Frostfangs churned darker. Snow would fall by nightfall, heavy enough to swallow tracks. Jon marched to the rookery tower. The third egg, wrapped in velvet, pulsed like a banked hearthstone. Jon set it in the brazier ashes, stoked a ring of coals, and whispered words he didn't know he knew. Syllables of old Valeria that tasted of smoke and sunrise. Nothing happened at first. Then hairline fissures traced across the shell. He snatched his hand away as orange lines spidered, and the air thickened with spice-scented heat. Feeble chirping rose. The shell split, and a narrow snout pushed free, scales black as midnight oil with flecks of sapphire. Tiny horns spiraled along its crest. Jon caught his breath. The hatchling shook off shards, wings unfolding like damp silk before snapping wide with a rustle. It sneezed a plume of sparks. Sam stepped back, eyes wide. "Third of three," he whispered. "What will you name it?" Jon reached slowly, letting the hatchling sniff his palm. Heat licked his skin. "No name yet. A creature should earn one by deed." The dragon nipped his finger, not drawing blood, but marking. Jon felt a warmth flooded from the bite. A tether forming among his heartbeat, the creature's tiny chest, and flickers of memory. Rushing water, a blood-stained tower, a woman's voice humming lullabies. He blinked away a tear. The dragon crawled up his forearm, claws pricking leather, and perched on his shoulder as if rightful throne. "Keep scrolls safe," Jon told Sam, and descended the stair with a dragon no larger than a house cat perched upon him. Dusk painted the yard copper when Jon assembled at the south smithy. Builders stacked Dawn's shards, 2 long splinters, 4 minor, 1 sliver no bigger than a quill, each pale and full of sleeping starlight. Noy stood beside the forge, bellows men at ready. Kirel perched on a training scaffold, tail lashing. Mirax perched atop the chimney, dripping molten slag where her wingtips brushed the hot bricks. The newborn black dragon clung inside Jon's cloak, peeking at sparks with luminous eyes. Noye thrust tongs forward. "Light the coals, beast." Jon nodded to Kirel, who cocked his head like a curious hawk. Jon summoned the sensation of the earlier dive, the rush of air, the tightening gut, the surge before release. Kirel caught the memory. His chest expanded. Inner embers glowed bright. A river of fire jetted across the charcoal. The air rippled with heat. Coals exploded into bright yellow. "Again," Noye barked. Kirel obliged in short bursts until the forge roared like a dragon's own heart. Noye's single hand wielded tongs with impossible dexterity, dipping shards into the crucible, adding flecks of rare flux ground from meteor ore. Sparks streamed crimson and gold. Under dragon flame, Dawn's fragments softened, edges glowing milky white, then molten silver. Noye's brow tracked rivulets of sweat. His stump pressed the crucible's rim for leverage. He lifted the slagging metal onto the anvil, where 2 assistants hammered in synchronized strokes. The newborn dragon squeaked with each ring of the hammer. Hours stretched. Stars sown by the comet emerged overhead. Night settled, but the smithy glowed. Noye folded the metal upon itself again and again, forging a narrower blade than Dawn. lighter, with fuller running deeper, almost a rapier. At last he quenched the hot steel in a trough of oil. Flames leapt skyward as glowing blade met liquid. The hiss echoed across the yard. Noé held the sword upright, and starlight from the comet's tail seemed to swirl inside the metal, baited by its own kinship to cosmic stone. John stepped forward. Noé presented the sword, hilt first. I cannot call it dawn. Worse men would call it twilight. He rolled his shoulder. Name it as you will. John clasped the hilt. Ivory wrapped in dragonhide, crossguard shaped like unfurled wings. The blade vibrated against his bones. Humming recognition. This will remain sheathed until prophecy needs it. A sister sword to daybreak. We'll call her Nightfall. For when darkness rises, it will falter under its own name. Builders murmured approval. Carol shrieked, wings beating sparks. John sheathed Nightfall and thrust it into the earth by the forge. Tonight it cools in the realm's soil. That same hour, Benjamin Stark led 10 rangers and a dozen free folk through the gate tunnel, on shaggy garons bound south with letters closed in wax. One to Robb Stark pledging dragons, and the watched loyalty. Another to Lady Mormont beseeching bare iron and seasoned spears. A third to Stannis Baratheon at Dragonstone reminding him of his duty to the wall he once swore to defend. The comet's red glare lit their passage. John watched until their lanterns vanished into swirling snow. Inside the shield hall he convened council with Alazar, the Weeper, Tormund, Noé, Sam, and Coral the Maid, a free folk shield maiden whose clan had shepherded mammoths in the Milkwater Valley. Auroras rippled green outside slitted windows, giving faces a spectral tinge. We survived the Night King, John began. But the wall cracked. The enemy regroups. We must prepare to abandon Castle Black if ice fails. Murmurs rose. Eliezer frowned, but remained silent. Tormund spat on the floor. Caves south o' Queen's Crown hold 3,000 hearts. We hide there. Shore tunnels with timber. Ben? John nodded. If the wall breaks, we fall back to Queen's Crown and hold the ruins as Outer Bailey. Builders dig fire trenches laced with pitch. Stewards ferry food stores daily. He looked to the Weeper. Your clans build ice traps along the Milkwater. Any walker that tries crossing drowns beneath. The wildling dipped his head. Sam, John continued. Study that shard. Find how long before a walker's spirit reforms. If we bought only days, we must strike first. Sam adjusted spectacles with ink-blotched fingers. Scrolls suggest their power waxes with darkness. A long night strengthens them. Light thins them. If we hold winter solstice without moon, they rally. He swallowed. We must break their cycle. Some binding runes hold their being together. Break the rune. Break the rebirth. John placed a hand on Sam's shoulder. You find the rune, I'll break it. Eliezer folded arms. And the dragons? Hatchlings today, battle mounts next fortnight? They grow with fire and fresh kill, John said. Mirax and Kyril already double their hatch weight. The little one, he let the new dragon climb to his wrist, feeds every 2 hours. We name him Frostfire. The dragon chirped approval at its own paradox. Noé chuckled. Bug'll be eating goats before dawn. Then we teach him to hunt whites, John said. The following weeks cascaded in tireless labor. Builders hauled dwarf pine. Free folk carved palisades. Rangers ranged west to the Bridge of Skulls in search of salvageable iron. Mirax and Kyril trained daily. John would climb a rope tower, whistle thrice, and they would stoop at the target bale of hay soaked in goat blood. Each pass grew surer, flames longer, until hay vanished in ash. Frostfire rode his siblings' backs. Squealing triumph when their streams of fire melted practice dummies into char. Hungry dragons demanded livestock. Then cows. Stewards raided abandoned barns in the gift, returning with carts of chickens that turned to blackened feathers in minutes. The weeper winced at the waste, until John promised equal shares of each hunt's venison. An uneasy camaraderie formed, raiders and crows standing shoulder to shoulder in hunting parties, dragging elk quarters to the feeding pit just outside the main gate. Men still slept with knives close, but laughter began to mingle with the hammer's beat. Letters returned. Lady Mormont's reply came first, ink dark, words curt. Bear Island stands with snow and flame. Send forges for ours. A wagon train of seasoned timber, masted sails turned into shields, trudged north, guarded by 25 grim warriors led by a girl no taller than Joan's hip, who called herself Alisanne the Cub. She demanded a ride on Kirill's back. John compromised on a wingtip perch and earned her unending devotion. From White Harbor, Lord Wyman manderly pledged 2 grain ships and 5 barrels of lamp oil. A personal note scrawled in the margins. Dragons prove prophecy. We suspend feud with Bolton if you guarantee winter roots. The Dreadfort, by contrast, answered with silence thicker than flayed skin. The most surprising messenger arrived half a moon later. Melisandre of Ashai, clad in scarlet wool, riding a pale mare across the snow-struck plain. She bore Stannis Baratheon's standard, a crowned stag within a flaming heart. Castle Black's watchers shouted alarm. John rode forth with Kirill circling. Melisandre dismounted, eyes like polished garnet reflecting Kirill's swoops. Azor Ahai, she murmured when John approached. I bear many names, John cautioned, and kneel to none. Azor Ahai kneels to no one, yet Stannis Baratheon is rightful king by law and fire. She studied the comet's tail arching overhead. I come to see if the blade of prophecy burns in your hand. John drew to nightfall. Its pale starlight flickered red in Melisandre's gaze. It burns with night's ending, not men's crowns. A fine quibble. She smiled. A crescent moon of secrets. The true foe is darkness. Serve it with Stannis, and fire shall forge the new dawn. John sheathed the sword. Stannis swore himself to the watch once. Let him honor it without politics. She tilted her head. He marches for Winterfell. Snow chokes the causeway, but his knights press on. Offer him dragons. He will turn his banners north. Jon's heart clenched. Sansa and Arya rumored captive in the Red Keep. Bran and Rickon vanished. Winterfell burned by Greyjoys. Now Stannis sought to claim charred halls. The realm fractured like the wall's fissure. I cannot hand dragons to kings. They answer only to those they trust. Even so, they love fire born of king's blood. She raised a ruby-ringed hand. In Dragonstone's grotto we burned leeches full of king's blood. One king died, another betrayed, a third fled. Power flows through blood's song. John thought of the bite Frostfire left on his finger, the pulsing tether. King's blood or not, I will not burn the living. Melisandre's smile faded. Light and shadow vie. Refuse sacrifice, and the night may stretch unbroken. She mounted. Stannis will arrive in 30 days' march. Decide your fealties. She spurred south into whirling snow. Snow thickened into blizzards. Patrol horns became muted ghosts in swirling drifts. The wall groaned nightly. Cracked spiderweb though braces held. John kept vigil by torchlit parapet. Frostfire nestled under his collar. Kirill and Mirax roosting on an ice-scoured tower. Each night he watched northern gloom, expecting azure eyes to appear. But nothing stirred. Sam's studies bore fruit. In a moldy tome bound with human hide, he found a diagram, concentric sigils encircling a stylized humanoid figure. The caption in Valyrian spoke of Kalur Sanagan, binding rings, energies of cold-made flesh. Sam linked the patterns to the ice shard. The filaments inside matched the rings. Break all 7 rings and the spirit within would scatter beyond recall. But how? John convened Noi, Tormund, and scholars of the Free Folk. Carl the Maid recognized the rings. Crude versions scratched on cavern walls beyond the frozen shore. Ice priests carved them with bone knives before raising new whites. She said, "Destroy the carving," Sam surmised, "and the white collapses." Carvings etched in the walkers themselves, John mused. Nightfall's fuller glittered in lamplight. A blade of star metal, forged in dragon flame, might cleave the runes. But Night King remained unmade, yet unbound. John feared a spirit without shell was more dangerous, free to seep into cracks of ice and bone. He dreamed nightly of swirling frost coalescing into eyes behind him. Waking, he'd find frostfire hissing at empty air. One dawn, to call it dawn was generous, the sky merely diluting from coal to slate. Scouts reported movement at the gorge. John led a swift team. Thorn, Pip, the Weeper, Carl, and Kirill overhead. They crested a snow ridge and spied a frozen river delta, choked with shattered trees and glacial rubble. Amid it, a rectangular monolith of ice protruded 5 stories high, surfaces carved in spirals like the rings Sam described. At its foot knelt scores of wildlings, eyes glazed blue, wrists cut to feed blood into glyph grooves. A single white walker, taller than any before, shaped from swirl of hoarfrost, placed a shard of black ice at the altar's heart. The Night King's spirit, John realized. This was reincarnation. Kirill screeched. The walker turned its faceless gaze upward. John unslung horn bow, knocked dragonglass arrow. Thorn mirrored him. They loosed. Arrows streaked, struck chest and head, both shattered, splinters scattering. The walker stumbled but did not fall. Frost flowed to knit holes. John cursed. Glyphs on the monolith pulsed brighter. Air temperature plunged. Destroy altar, John ordered. The Weeper and Carl charged downhill, hacking enthralled wildlings. Thorn produced wildfire pot, hurled it at the base. It shattered, green flame-soaked grooves igniting blood. The glyph's glow flickered. The walker screeched, arms spasming. John drew Nightfall. Shard ice in the walker's chest gleamed black as void. He sprinted through slush, leapt, and drove Star Steel tip into the shard. Nightfall slid through like parchment. A boom split the air. The shockwave hurled him backward. Snow and ash spiraled skyward in a column. Kirill caught John mid-fall, talons bruising ribcage, and lifted him to ridge top. Below, the walker disintegrated into powder. The monolith cracked in 8 places, collapsed like rotten teeth. Wildlings freed of enchantment collapsed weeping, eyes reverting brown. John zagged against Kirill's neck. They had severed one rebirth, but how many altars remained? Returning to Castle Black, he felt the walls tremor anew. Deep, ominous. Builders beneath the arch shouted warnings. A rumble like distant thunder grew, then a roar. Ice fissure gaped wider, and a crescent chunk the size of a holdfast groaned, sheared, and slid southward. Men screamed, scrambling clear as 50,000 tons of ice shattered into the bailey, flattening workshops and stables. Snow plume blotted sky, timbers snapped. Horses shrieked. John leapt from Kirill before the dragon crashed short of the avalanche. He scrambled to dig survivors from drifts. Noy smithy roof caved. He and 3 apprentices lay pinned beneath beams. Mirax grappled a half-collapsed tower, talons gouging granite, flapping to keep balance. Frostfire tumbled through sky, wings flailing until he latched onto Mirax's tail and clung. Squealing, the dust settled. The wall had lost a tooth, an inward notch that cut through to the outer face. Cold air hissed through newly exposed tunnels. Yet the structure still stood, barely. Eliezer Thorn staggered into view, face smeared with soot. "We can't hold if another section fails," he croaked. "Evacuation to Queenscrown tonight." Joan's chest throbbed from bruises. He surveyed the ruin. Crushed wagons, shattered anvils, half the larders buried. A signal withdrawal. Nemsau. Horns blew, 2 long blasts, 1 short. The code for strategic retreat. Brothers dashed to gather kits. Free folk herded children and goats. Dragons circled overhead like restless sparks. Night deepened while lines snaked south. John oversaw rear guard, riding Kirill's shoulder above the columns. Frostfire fluttered ahead, guided by comet light. Snow still fell, muffling steps. They crossed the bridge at Queenscrown under stars, banners tattered by wind. There, builders lit torches inside earthen ramparts, carved from the hill forts mounded rings. Fires warmed spirits, but dread hung pregnant. The wall no longer fortress, merely a looming wounded sentinel at their backs. John met Noé by the main gate. The smith's leg was splinted, but he stood on crutches, iron jaw set. "Wall's bones cracked deeper than we thought," he murmured. "One hard freeze, and it'll come down like a drunk on a ladder." John shuddered. "When it falls, the dead will pour through the gap." He looked eastward. The wall's silhouette fractured against stars, white plumes still drifting from the collapse. It seemed to sigh, exhausted after 8,000 years. Voices approached, rangers at the fore, lanterns bobbing. Benjamin Stark emerged from the dark, mantle rimed with frost, beard stiff. Behind him marched 200 spearmen bearing flayed man banners, the Boltons, yet their standards flew inverted, flayed man righted, meaning parley. At their center rode Stannis Baratheon, astride a black courser, grim as legend. Davos Seaworth bore a torch. Melisandre's red cloak rippled like living flame. Benjen dismounted, embraced John, ribs protesting. Came as swift as roads allowed. Robb holds river run. Stannis broke siege at Deepwood Motte, and marched here. Bolton bannermen in irons. Banter. Dew. John studied Lord Bolton riding sullen beside Stannis, wrists manacled. Melisandre's smile splayed wide at sight of Frostfire curled on Jon's shoulder. Stannis reined in. "You are Lord Commander Snow?" His tone held iron courtesy. "I am." John met his gaze, neither bowing nor challenging. Stannis' gloved hand pointed north. "Your wall falls. My army, what remains, will garrison the gap." He glanced at Frostfire. "But dragons trump masonry. Will they serve?" "They serve life," John replied. "Command them, and they burn you as quick as walkers." Melisandre interjected softly. "They answer king's blood." John stiffened. Stannis' jaw tightened. "Will not kill to win them," John said. "Kill," Stannis snapped. "I honor law. If blood is price for realm's survival, I pay mine." He dismounted, drew dagger, slashed palm. Blood dripped into snow, steaming. He stepped forward, hand outstretched toward Frostfire. The hatchling hissed, wings mantling, but did not strike. Stannis' eyes widened faintly, as if daring fate. Frostfire sniffed, then licked the blood with forked tongue. Firelight pulsed along its throat. It cocked head at John, as if asking permission. Jon's pulse hammered. "Dragon chooses his fire," he muttered. Frostfire launched, circled, then landed atop Stannis' pauldron, claws careful. Melisandre exhaled rapture. Stannis stared up, expression a mix of awe and vindication. "Seems choice is made," he murmured. Carol shrieked overhead, banking. Mirax joined, flame tongues lashing sky. John prayed dragons would not claim divided loyalties. But Ko'Karal swept low, brushing Jon's shoulder with a wingtip, a reminder of their bond. "We join forces," John said. "Wall may fall tomorrow. 3 dragons may not save us alone. We need every sword south, north, east, wildlings, Northmen, Baratheons, Ironborn if they'll come. Only unity kindles dawn." Stannis wiped blood on cloak. "Then we march at daybreak." Benjen clasped Jon's elbow. "I'll ride for White Harbor, pull Manderley north. Robb pushes King's Road. If the wall falls, we lure dead to Moat Cailin, bottleneck in bogs." John nodded, hope stirring faint. "Go with my blessing." Auroras unraveled overhead, crimson ribbons twisting around the comet's tail, painting campfires in stained glass hues. Men stared skyward, free and bound alike, and forgot mistrust while the heavens bled light. John walked the inner rampart, frost crunching beneath boots slick with dragon ash. Kiral landed at his side, hind claws sinking into earth, tail twitching. John placed a palm on warm scale. "Storm ahead, brother," he whispered. "But we hold its eye," Kiral rumbled. Smoke curling. Nightfall hung at John's hip. Beyond, the faint outline of the shattered wall glimmered under starlight like a scar across the face of the world. Deep, raw, but not yet fatal. John squared his shoulders. Tomorrow, alliances would be forged or fail. Fire and frost and blood would mingle till dawn's last light decided. He lifted his gaze to the comet, the sword of the morning sky, and swore silently that if the wall crumbled, he would rebuild it stone by stone, bone by bone, with dragons for mortar and the world's last hopes for foundations. And if that failed, he would stand at the gap alone, bearing nightfall and the memory of Arthur Dayne, until the rising sun turned his frozen corpse into a pyre of starlight. Behind him, the mixed army of crows, wildlings, Baratheons, Boltons and bears settled to restless slumber beneath watchfires. Above them, 3 dragons circled like sparks spinning from a forge, tiny yet terrible, and far to the north, unseen by any but haunted dreams, blue lights guttered inside rent ice, flickering like candles rejected by the wind, yet refusing to die. The long night was wounded, but it would return, searching for the blade that had scarred it and the boy who had become its bane. And Jon Snow, sword of the dawn reborn, waited with star-forged steel and dragons of living flame, ready to carve the darkness anew. Oh, Ka. Snow sighed down from a slate-colored sky like the slow fall of ash after a great burning. In the half-light before dawn, Queen's Crown's ring walls crouched beneath the drift. Earthworks blanketed until they seemed smooth white dunes dotted by torches that swayed and hissed in the wind. Jon Snow stood on the inner rampart above the south gate, cloak snapping behind him. To the north, the broken wall loomed a pale and jagged ruin whose missing tooth drank the horizon's glow, as though the world had been bitten by something too large to imagine. Below, the camp of 1,000 mismatched souls stirred in uneasy wakefulness. Free folk lit copper braziers beside knights' watch stew pots. Baratheon spearmen piled fresh-cut pine for rampart stakes. Lady Mormont's bears drilled shield wall formations with snarled northern oaths. Bolton men, still iron-collared by Stannis' justice, hawed timber under the eyes of grim guards. 3 dragons wheeled overhead, Kiral's bronze wings cleaving the gray, Mirex's streaking gold, and Frostfire, scarcely dog-sized but loud as any warhorn, darting between his elder siblings on flickers of cobalt flame. Jon watched flame gouts blossom, as Kiral roasted a pile of half-frozen boar carcasses for morning rations. The smell of sizzling fat drifted up, stirring the hunger in his belly. Yet he lingered, scanning the snowfields for movement. Half-sure blue eyes stared from every drift. Purpose had become a constant ache in his bones. Even exhaustion could not dull it. Footsteps crunched behind him. Stannis Baratheon ascended the rough-hewn stair, mailed boots leaving deep prints. He wore no crown, only a plain steel gorget etched with the stag within flaming heart. Fresh bandages peeked from under his gauntlet, where Frostfire's claws had earlier pierced his pauldron. The dragon himself now perched on Stannis' left shoulder like a living standard, tail curled down the man's back, smoke whispering from his nostrils. "They obey meal bells better than trumpets," Stannis said without preamble, nodding at Kiral's feeding pyre. "They obey their own hungers," Jon answered. "Men are the same. Keep them fed, they'll dig trenches through permafrost." He glanced at Frostfire. The hatchling blinked molten orange eyes, almost curious. Stannis folded hands at the rail. "Night's watch rations run thin. My quartermasters count 3 weeks of oats at half measure. We must open White Harbor's grain ships sooner." "Lord Manderley sails as fast as ice permits," Jon said. "I'd send a dragon to guide him through pack flows, but even Kiral tires over open sea." Stannis' jaw tightened. "Then ration we must. And we must strike before we starve. Every day, the dead regather." "Mensa windy." Jon did not dispute it. Sam's latest raven spoke of white sightings beyond the last river. Villages found empty save for carved spirals in the snow. Altars like the one John had shattered were springing up faster than they could be raised. The Night King's spirit was hunting vessels. "We need to kill his seed," John said. "Sam believes the runes mark 7 vessels prepared for his return. We destroyed one. 6 remain." Stannis' gaze hardened, reflecting dawn's first ember. "Then we march." "Not yet." John felt the chill of unsheathed steel crawl his spine at the thought of premature battle. Mirax and Kyril grow daily, but they won't bear armored riders for another moon. Nightfall and Dragonglass alone might not finish him. We must break every vessel together, or he'll slip into the next. Delay invites defeat, and haste ensures it. John met the older man's eyes, saw stubborn fire banked under flinty weariness. "Give me 10 days. Stannis hesitated like a blade testing edge against whetstone, then dipped his chin. 10. Use them. Squander them, and winter buries us both. Then Durrell. He descended without farewell, frostfire flaring miniature wings for balance. John blew a plume of frost from his lungs and turned north again, measuring the silence where the wall once stood proud. 10 days. They began with the trenches. By afternoon, teams of watchbuilders and Bolton prisoners hacked at permafrost outside Queen's Crown's outer ring, digging staggered ditches that funneled into fire pits lined with pitch barrels. Tormund Giantsbane directed free folk to plant sharpened mammoth bones beyond the ditches. Donal Noy's smiths bound them to iron spikes salvaged from fallen stables. Lady Alysanne Mormontspears patrolled the tree line, axes glittering. Each pounding hammer, each shovel stroke, was another heartbeat stolen from dread. John labored among them whenever he could, swinging mattock beside Gren and the Weeper, sharing the sting of ice splinters that flew from the hard ground. He recognized in their wary glances a lingering awe of dragons and prophecy. But steel camaraderie grew where awe wore thin. Men told jokes of frost-nipped manhood and the stink of wildling seal grease. They argued over which of Mirax or Kyril could scorch a stag whole. They cursed Stannis' bean counting, then gulped the meager beans with thanks. By the 4th night, the moon emerged, a chipped silver coin, and Samwell Tarly crept into Joan's command tent clutching a leather folio. Ink smudged his cheeks, exhaustion darkened his eyes, yet excitement kindled there as well. "I found the pattern," he whispered, unrolling parchment across Joan's bunk. Quill diagrams spiraled like frost flowers. 7 concentric circles, each annotated with tight Valyrian glyphs. 8 the center. The Night King's essence anchors. Each outer ring is a vessel, a kind of mold that can house him if the inner circle shatters. The vessels need sacrifice of living blood and ice worked with those runes. Sam tapped tiny symbols drawn beside each ring. Each vessel must be prepared at a different lie point of cold magic. Old stories call them winter hearts. I compared maps. Look. Dayne. He laid a Northlands chart atop the parchment. 7 marks pricked distances like points on a snowflake. One near the gorge, already destroyed. One beside the lakes of the Fist of the First Men. Another in the Frostfang passes. 2 on the shattered plateau called the Shivering Shore. 1 at the ruins of the Night Fort itself. And the last deep beyond the Milkwater where rivers birthed Black Marsh. We can't reach all before they finish, Sam admitted. But if we strike the Night Fort site and the Frostfang site together, the sequence breaks. The glyph math collapses. The walkers cannot pass power between incomplete rings. Then, how long before they complete them? John asked. Judging by white sightings, 3, perhaps 4 days for the Night Fort ring, less for the Frostfangs. John exhaled. Stannis' ultimatum pulsed like a drumbeat. Sam's timeline was harsher still. Then we strike in 3. Sam gulped. You'll need riders swift as ravens. I'll need dragons. Kyril could now bear Joan's weight in short hops. Mirax might manage Benjen in light harness. Frostfire could not carry even a child, but his flame burned white hot. A pocket torch for runes. John narrowed eyes at the parchment. 2 teams. I lead Kyril southwest to the Night Fort. Benjen flies Mirax to the Frostfang Pass. On foot, Stannis marches rangers to support Benjen. Tormund leads free folk to mine the Night Fort's tunnels. Sam's fingers trembled over the map. A two-front assault. A necessary one. Jon rolled the parchment. Rest, Sam. Tomorrow we prepare saddles. Saddling a dragon was no task for novices. Donal Noy studied ancient Valyrian etchings, Sam unearthed, then improvised with boiled leather and bear hide, forging buckles from melted silver coin to resist flame. Kyrell snarled at first lash of girth strap. Jon crooned in high Valyrian phrases gleaned from Arthur's journals. The dragon's temper cooled, and Mirax soon accepted lighter tack-sized for Benjen. On the 7th day, white sun broke through cloud, dazzling the camp with cruel brightness. Jon donned blackened mail, cinched a quilted tunic over charred scars, slung nightfall across his back. At the east rampart, Stannis gathered his bannermen, Stormland's pikes, Queen's men zealots, even sullen Dreadfort spears, now freed of chains after swearing new oaths before a heart fire. Melisandre stood at his shoulder, scarlet cloak snapping, ruby at her throat pulsing in cadence with Frostfire's hidden flame somewhere within her furs. She offered Jon a leather bottle. Fire milk distilled of shadowbind herbs. A drop on blade edge, and ice breaks like glass. Jon accepted, corked it. No shadow sacrifice. Not today, she said, eyes half-lidded. Today blood enough spills on snow. Benjen joined, girded in black and gray brigandine. Mirax crouched behind him, wings mantling. Noy's smiths had riveted lightweight stirrups along forward ridge plates. Benjen tested them, face pale but resolute. Fly swift, Jon told him. Signal with green flame if you succeed. We'll return blue. Don't die, Benjen answered, offering a wry grin. Jon clasped forearms with him, then swung into Kyrell's saddle. Cold wind whipped his cheeks. Dragon scale radiated heat against his thighs. He fixed Clark-made goggles over eyes, tugged fur collar high. Kyrell's muscles bunched. With a powerful thrust, he sprang skyward, wings beating thunder. Snow blasted into swirling vortex. Below, the camp erupted in cheers. Mirax followed, golden membrane catching sunlight like a sail of fire, and in 2 heartbeats they were specks arrowing across the white plain. Kyrell flew lower than eagles, but higher than ravens, cresting snow-laden forests. Jon guided with pressure of knees and gentle pull on neck strap. Da! Sky tasted of ice and distant smoke. The Night Fort soon hove into view, a hulking silhouette hammered by centuries, its massive gate sealed with black iron, towers sagging like broken teeth. He tilted Kyrell into a descending spiral, landing within the ring-wall courtyard amid swirling powder. Tormund's advance party were already there, free folk in patchwork furs and watchbuilders guiding sledges of pitch casks. The Weeper crouched over a camp map etched in ash. When Kyrell's claws struck flagstone, the free folk bristled, memories of dragonfire old as song, but Tormund boomed laughter, clapped a comrade's shoulder. "Hail the Crow King," he bellowed. Jon dismounted, cloak snapping, nightfall at his hip. "Where are the runes?" The Weeper led to the courtyard's well. Stone blocks around it had been chiseled away, exposing a wide throat descending into darkness. On each radial block new carvings spiraled in fresh ice, faintly luminous, fed by a thin trickle of blood that dripped from flayed corpses hung above. 3 bandits long dead to cold, their veins frozen spigots. Jets of ruby ice drummed runes, filling grooves like living ink. Jon's stomach tightened. He remembered Bran's stories. The Night Fort housed the Black Gate and stories of the Rat Cook. Now a darker ritual nested here. "Burn them," he ordered. Builders doused a bundle of torches in pitch, thrust flame to cloth. Free folk hauled down the corpses, laid them on tar-soaked timbers. Fire rose, melting bloody icicles, steam swirling like spirits. But the runes glowed brighter, leaching heat from flame. Ice hissed, solidifying to resist. Jon uncorked Melisandre's fear milk, smeared a line along Nightfall's edge. A chemical sting filled his nostrils. He stepped to the well rim, whispered words absorbed from Sam's translations, then plunged the sword tip into central glyph. Searing white exploded, a soundless concussion shattering nearby windows. Nightfall drilled through stone with surprising ease. The runes flared scarlet, cracked, splintered outward in spider-web fractures. Blood ceased trickling. Frozen corpses collapsed to ash. From below, a roar answered, hollow pained, as though some colossus had felt a spear in its heart. Snowdust avalanched off ramparts. One of the abandoned towers groaned and slumped another foot. John held the sword until the light winked out. He withdrew. The blade's edge shimmered purple-white before cooling to starlit sheen. He exhaled shaky breath. The first target was broken. Yet the roar echoed still, distant now, reverberating northward. He feared the Night King felt each wound and hastened the others. Ready to ride, he barked. Tormund signaled his hornman. A basso note carried across the courtyard. They would leave a squad to guard the ruin, but John dared not linger. Kyrell launched once more, wings carving frigid dawn. As they climbed, John poured a trickle of fire milk over leather strap to test. Droplets hissed like molten snow, but leather held. He corked tight, precious drops reserved for the next circle. Half-day later he spied the green flare Benjen had promised, a streak of viridian arcing above jagged frost fangs. Relief soaked him. Both vessels were sundered. Now they must join forces before the Night King struck back. He signaled with a blue flare. Powdered lapis and pine tar ignited in Kyrell's wake. The sky became bruised blue swirling with unnatural colors as the comet's tail brightened in afternoon's slant. He veered east to intercept Benjen's flight path. But wind shifted, carrying with it an eerie thrum. Kyrell growled. Mirak's gold-flash silhouette emerged through cloud. Benjen slumped low in saddle. Blood darkened his sleeve. John guided Kyrell alongside. Benjen. The older Stark lifted eyes, face pale but determined. Walker ambush after we shattered the runes. Mirak's torched most, but a shard spear caught my arm. John studied the wound. Blackened edges crusted in frost. Ice poison? Wu land, he said. They touched down in a sheltered hollow among wind-polished boulders. Free folk outriders found them quickly. Quarrel the maid produced a kettle of boiling pine pitch kept for white cauterization. John stripped Benjen's sleeve, revealing a puncture ringed with spreading gray veins. Must cut out rot, Carl said, already heating a dagger. Benjen gripped Joan's forearm. Do it, he rasped. It was quick, but not kind. John held his uncle's shoulders while Carl sliced away flesh. Steam rising as pine pitch sizzled in the wound. Benjen bit a strap to silence screams. When it was done, the spreading frost receded, but his strength waned. Still ride? John asked. No, Benjen confessed, sweat freezing on brow. Fly back. But Mirak's. The golden dragon lay panting, wing gashed. She had fought fiercely. John weighed options. He could not delay. The Night King would strike the gap at any hour. He pressed a waterskin to Benjen's lips. Ride south with Carl. Stanna surgeons tend you. I'll bring Mirak's once she mends. Benjen attempted protest, but yielded to dizziness. Carl mounted him before a sturdy wildling guide. Mirak's remained, gazing after her bonded rider with plaintive rumble. John stroked her snout. Guard him, girl. Fly when you're able. He mounted Kyrell again, heart heavy. Night approached by the time Queenscron's fires glittered ahead. From above John saw new ramparts bristling with spears, flame trenches ready. Within, Stannis' war camp buzzed like a kicked hive. He landed in the central square where Melisandre's ruby glowed brighter than torchlight. Frostfire flitted between posts, shrieking greeting to Kyrell. John dismounted before Stannis. 2 vessels broken. Benjen wounded but will mend. Bentrol. Stannis nodded. Good. We march on the 3rd at dawn. The shivering shore. Scouts report Walker gather there. John frowned. That's 2 vessels side by side. If they complete both, the Night King may split his spirit. Melisandre smoothed a stray lock of red hair. One fire may melt two candles if flame burns hot enough. She met Joan's gaze. Your dragons doubled in strength with each ritual broken, did you feel it? Jon had felt Kirill's fire hotter, wings beating stronger. Yes. The Night King weakens. Her smile held promise and peril. Forge the last blow while iron cools. Jon wished Arthur Dayne's steady counsel remained. He found himself yearning for voices lost. Ned's quiet honor, Sam's calm logic, even Elieser's blunt doubt. But leadership meant bearing absence like armor. He turned to gather commanders. Donal Noy drew lines in ash on a shield plank, arranging troop blocks. Baratheon pikes up center, Night's Watch crossbows flanking, free folk skirmishers harassing edges, bears guarding Dragon's landing zone. Elieser Thorne would command rampart defense should the wall fully collapse, while main force absent. Jon shared Sam's map of rune circles with Melisandre and Lord Mormont's niece. Strategy fixed. If they shattered both runes, the Night King would be left ringless, forced into his original body, still scattered across ice dust. Then nightfall and dragonfire could finish what prophecy began. They set out under aurora-lit sky, the comet a bloody scar overhead. Snowshoes crunched. Sled runners squealed. Carol soared ahead, scouting. Tens of miles slipped beneath boots and hooves, until moon dipped behind western hills. As first bruise of dawn tinted east, they crested a ridge above the shivering shore. A broad frozen shelf washed by gray sea. 2 ice altars rose there, twin hexagons laced with pulsing runes, joined by a walkway of blue glass. Between them hundreds of wights knelt in concentric rows, chanting in tongues of silence, breath steaming in columns. At each altar's heart stood a white walker forging black shards into humanoid frames, twin puppets awaiting a master. Jon signaled halt. Stannis ordered archers forward, crossbows cocked with dragonglass bolts. Melisandre whispered Valyrian words. Torches flared crimson. Frostfire lifted from her shoulder, wings blazing bright as a forged spark. Jon swung atop Kiral, drew nightfall, and shouted across the army. For dawn! His voice carried like thunder over rustling ice. Kiral Davidat. Behind, Mormont's bears charged, throats roaring. Baratheon pikes advanced at measured pace, watch crossbows loosed. Jon felt dragonfire swell in Kirill's throat, a furnace of righteous fury. They slammed into first altar, flame-gilding runes in molten orange. Nightfall's fire-milk-tipped edge bit glyphstone. The altar cracked, luminescence guttering. Under him, Kiral recoiled as icy tendrils tried to coil around talons. Jon swung again. Stone exploded to shards amid steam and splintering runelight. Below, whites surged, but free folk javelins felled first ranks. Frostfire darted among them, spraying jets that ignited corpses like tinder bundles. Stannis Pike speared onward toward the second altar. A white walker strode out, armor humming with crystalline resonance, spear of jagged obsidian, wreathed in frigid aura. It swept pikes aside like twigs, freezing steel brittle enough to shatter. Storm's End knights fell screaming as frost cascaded. Stannis himself charged, greatsword Lightbringer, forged by Melisandre's rites, glowing faint red. He parried the spear once, twice, but frost kissed blade and dimmed its light. The walker lifted to strike killing blow, when Mirax descended like a falling sun, golden fire engulfing spear shaft. The weapon cracked, walker reeled. Benjen slid from Mirax's harness, arm bound but sword steady. He drove dragonglass dagger into walker's back. Ice flared sapphire. The creature shrieked. Stannis swung Lightbringer across its throat, shearing head. The body collapsed. Shards twitching. Shouts rose. Morale surged. Jon spurred Kiral toward second altar. But a boom echoed. The runes flared lurid violet. From the broken first altar, rune light spiraled upward, streaming toward the intact one, intent on completion even if half destroyed. The shattered vessel was sacrificing itself to finish the other. Melisandre screamed warning. Jon dove, but white giants toppled into his path, hurling ice chunks. Kiral barrel rolled, Nightfall slashed a giant's arm, but time slipped. Stannis rallied knights, pushing through. Yet the spiral of light thickened, turning into hellish whirlpool above second altar. Within, a silhouette coalesced, 9 feet tall, crowned in icicles, sword of void in hand, the Night King reborn, forged by unfinished rings. Jon's blood iced. Everything rested on minutes. He landed Kyril on walkway, dismounted in a roll, sprinted into swirl of rune winds. Nightfall glowed, drawing comet light. The Night King turned, eyes wells of endless winter, void sword humming dark. Steel met nothingness. Jon felt forces rip along blade, like 2 universes scraping. Nightfall shuddered but held. Frost crusted Jon's beard instantly. He pivoted, cut at knee. Void sword parried, spraying sparks of pure black. Behind, Melisandre raised staff, a wave of fire milked from the comet's red tail through her ruby, arching toward altar. Frostfire and Mirax joined, breath fanning the flame into lance of white heat that struck the altar's base. Stone shrieked. Marrow ice melted. The rune spiral faltered. The Night King staggered, chest fracturing along old wound lines. Jon pressed, thrust Nightfall for heart space, where once shards nested. The void sword intercepted, but Stannis dove from side, Lightbringer flashing. Flame met void, clash sung like screaming metal. Both swords bounced away. The Night King thrust hand toward Stannis. Frost spikes erupted, skewering pauldrons, pinning him to altar. Lightbringer fell dull on ice. Jon roared, hacking at spikes to reach the king. Mirax swooped, claws raking crown of ice, distracting. The Night King spun, lashing Kyril with blast of glacial force. Kyril tumbled but recovered. Snow exploded to steam as Melisandre poured last of her fire milk onto altar fissures. Runes cracked, glow flickered. Jon saw sliver of shattered ring pulsing inside chest chasm left by Nightfall's earlier thrust. The anchor's sigil. One strike could sever. He fainted high, rolled beneath void's swing, and drove Nightfall two-handed up into that chasm. The blade tore through runes. Steel meet star metal, meet frozen rune. For a heartbeat nothing happened. Then the Night King's eyes widened, cracks racing from pupils. He reached to grasp blade but fingers splintered. Jon ripped sword sideways, cutting rune heart in half. Sound vanished. Light gut-punched sky. A flare so bright men a mile away threw up arms. Runes disintegrated into silver dust. The Night King shattered. Shards fluttering like ice leaves caught in gale. Spinning upward, vaporizing into spark motes that winked out. The void sword fell, cracked, dissolved into puddle of inky water that steamed away. Altar collapsed inward, runestones sagging as ordinary ice. Frost fog evaporated. Silence returned. A blanket over battlefield broken only by ragged breaths and crackle of dragon flame. Stannis slid down altar, free of brittle spikes. Benjen limped to brace him. Melisandre sank to knees, ruby blazing then guttering to dull embers. Frostfire circled above her, trilling soft victory. Snow still fell, but lighter now, flakes catching first blush of true dawn, a burnished gold that spread across sea and ruin alike. Jon zagged against Kyril's forearm, Nightfall point down in slush. The blade's runic shimmer faded to calm starglow. Crack line halfway up its fuller smoked and sealed, as though metal healed alongside world. Tormund raised horn, blared 3 triumphant notes. Baratheon soldiers whooped. Free folk sang guttural victory chants. Even Elizur Thorn, arriving with rampart reserves, allowed himself a crooked grin. Jon met Stannis at altar's rubble. They exchanged weary nods, no words needed. Then Melisandre spoke, voice thin. The great other is cast beyond the veil. For an age, but winter remains. She lifted hand toward Comet's dying tail, now paling in sunrise. The Lord of Light claims his dawn. Jon stared east, watching light spill across long-shadowed snow. He felt dragons' wing beats behind him, ember scent, swirling. Purpose still thrummed, not done, but transformed. The wall lay broken, Kingdoms lay at war, but the knight's heart had been pierced, and morning, however fragile, bled over the world. Kyril chuffed, nudging Joan's shoulder, golden eye reflecting a sunrise unmarred by blue frost. Jon sheathed Nightfall, turned to his mismatched army, tired, wounded, yet alive, and raised a fist. Cheers surged, echoing off ice cliffs, scattering into sky like sparks from a reborn forge. He let the noise wash him, then spoke just loud enough for Nearest to hear. Hold fast. We build the new wall from trust and tempered flame. We guard dawn, so no night like this returns. Yeah. Somewhere to the south, bells tolled in unseen towers, carrying rumor of dragons and an icy king's death. But between sea and shattered wall, the only music was wings and the hoarse chorus of men and women who had survived the end of the world and found it only the beginning of something harder, brighter, free. Jon Snow closed his eyes, felt warmth on his cheeks, and whispered Arthur Dayne's final teaching into the dawn. Protection, honor, on day, love. He opened them to the new day, the sword of the morning sky now sheathed beyond the horizon, and he went to lead his people home. Okay. Light lanced across the shivering shore, searing the last tatters of polar mist and gilding every flake of snow and quicksilver. Dawn's hush trembled, as if the land itself dared not break the fragile silence after so much screaming. Jon Snow drew one breath, then another, each exhalation painting ghost plumes that curled away on a salt-edged wind, smelling of brine, ash, and cracked frost. Kyril folded his wings behind Jon with a leathery sigh. Red gold membranes steamed where they brushed melted runes, and the bronze dragon's eyes followed every stir among the victor's ranks, wary as any watchhound after wolves have fled. Bodies studded the shore, whites frozen solid mid-snarl, Stormlander pikemen fallen in serried rows like corn scythed by hail, free folk spears jutting from snowdrifts where the living still twitched beneath. The bare island shields, raw wood rimed in hoar, ringed a pocket of wounded. Fires kindled by Melisandre's ruby lit the carnage in pulses, an arterial glow undercutting dawn's thin warmth. Somewhere deeper in the ice field, an unseen giant collapsed with a crunch that rolled back like subdued thunder. Jon's hands shook, less from cold than from the echo of the runic detonation that had unmade the Night King. Nightfall trembled in his grip, eager, restless, as if the blade yearned for more cutting, but he shoved the hunger aside. Enough, he whispered. The star-bright edge dimmed to pearly stillness. Stannis Baratheon leveraged himself upright, Lightbringer's red steel dull and nicked along one edge. The blade gave off only the faintest heat now, a guttering candle compared to dragonflame. Frostfire left Stannis' pauldron and fluttered to Jon's shoulder, claws finding purchase between scorched leather ridges. Jon felt the fledgling's excitement like a tiny forge against his collarbone. Eager, uncontained, bursting. He stroked the warm snout. You did well, little one. A soft trill answered. Benjen leaned on Mirak's chestplate, face the color of rotten snow but eyes fierce. Well struck, nephew. His voice caught. The pine pitch cautery had done its work but left him glassy with pain. But the wall, what remains of it, won't keep on its feet without sorcery to buttress the crack. Jon scanned the horizon. The distant silhouette of the wall, fractured but still towering, shimmered under sun like a cracked mirror. Every breath of wind carved new trickles down, exposed face. Sooner or later, gravity would finish what the walkers began. We rebuild or we replace, he said. Mortar of dragonflame-infused stone. Maester Leuven wrote of Valyrians who poured fire into ramparts that never fell. Menderwen. Donal Noy approached, wiping soot onto snow-caked apron. Needed a forge the size of Moat Caelin's keep, lad, and ore enough to plate a mountain. We'll start with one stone, Jon answered. And another. Tormund Giantsbane stomped over, red beard stiff with frozen spittle. First stone ought to be flung at any kneeler fool south o' the neck who thinks to claim our hides. We shed blood beside crows, worth more than a parchment promise. Stannis' mouth flattened. You'll have guest right beneath my banners until I grant lands, but follow lawful rule, wildling, or taste lawful steel. Tormund barked laughter. Law that hanged your own brother for love. Stannis' cheek twitched. Jon stepped between. No talk of gallows today. The dead are gone. We tend the living. He locked eyes with both men until Tormund spat. Stannis nodded stiffly, and the moment passed. Melisandre knelt upon fallen runestones, fingertips brushing residual frost glow. Her ruby burned bright again, feeding on something unseen. She murmured, half to herself, half to the dawn. A shadow has been driven beyond the curtain of light, yet shadows leave seeds. If the seeds take root in men's hearts, darkness returns. Jon crouched, voice low. Can your flames reveal those seeds? Her gaze met his, deep, deep-set pools reflecting Comet's ghostly remnant. Some, not all, but your dragons burn truer than my fires now. Follow their sight and you'll find the worm at the apple's core. She closed eyes, breathing in steam curling from cracked altar. Light and shadow war within you as well, Jon Snow. Keep your own darkness leashed. Meow. He rose, unsettled. Duty first. Introspection later. 3 days later, they reached Queen's Crown again. Battered column streaming over frost-worn hills into the hollow beneath the fortress mounds. News had outraced them. Ravens feathered with half-melted frost, bringing word that the White Walkers' storms had fallen silent across the north. Whites collapsed inland as if strings cut. Villages long muffled by terror sent scouts blinking into wan sun. Cheering pockets of small folk lined the causeway, prostrating before dragons that hissed overhead like living banners of fiery victory. Yet for every cheer, a dozen gaunt faces regarded the marching host with suspicion. Free folk campfires among Night's Watch tents looked like sparks ready to kindle civil war anew. Jon convened council the first night. The shield hall beneath Queen's Crown's earthen breast stank of sweat, tallow smoke, and damp wool, but thick oak beams muffled whistling winds well enough for parley. Stannis occupied the high chair. Jon stood at his right, a concession Stannis offered after long debate. Melisandre kept to shadows near the hearth. Lady Alysanne Mormont leaned on the rail, eyes bright as new sharpened steel. The Weeper lurked against a support post, cloak black as midnight on the milkwater. Donal Noy, Samwell Tarly, Alazer Thorne, and Lord Wyman Manderly's envoy, Sir Marlon Locke, completed the table. Parchments cluttered the boards. Grain tallies, forage requisitions, casualty rolls. Sam read dispatches from White Harbor. 7 cargo cogs anchored in Frozen Bay, holds near empty. Manderly begged quartermaster escort to ferry overland. Sir Marlon reported Robb Stark, besieging Harrenhal after smashing Lannister levies at the Twins, but supplies ran thin there too. Ironborn spoiling raids along Stony Shore complicated everything. Jon rapped knuckles on oak. Food comes first. If winter lasts 10 more moons, dragons can't eat fire alone. Nor soldiers, Thorne growled. Our casks hold little but dried beans and oat husks. Melisandre's voice cut through chatter. There's a bounty sleeping below Dreadfort granaries, grain lifted from Bear Island and Flint lands under Bolton taxes. The Boltons kneel on false coin, claim their debt to the realm. Sir Marlon Locke nodded. Bolton garrisons deserted after word of Walker's fall. A token force could seize the stores. Stannis drummed fingers. By right of conquest, the Boltons forfeit all to the one true king. Tormund spat into the rushes. Your true king bleeds men's bellies thin while he haggles parchments. Before tempers shattered, Jon raised a hand. Whatever our titles, people starve unless those grain stores move. I'll lead a detachment south tomorrow. Bears, crows, free folk, Baratheon knights. We take grain without burning fields. Then we send equal shares to White Harbor, Winterfell's armies, and Castle Black. Stannis narrowed eyes. Distributing my war spoil to a boy king in a half-dead ruin. It's the realm's spoil, Jon answered. Every throat we save can swing a hammer or saw barley come spring. The room rumbled with muted assent. Stannis considered, lips thin. At last he nodded. Very well, Snow. But see that ledgers mark every bushel. Then shall. Done, Jon thought. though he glimpsed storms in Stannis' eyes. Battle of iron principle against grudged necessity. Later, in the quiet after council, Jon found Sam studying dusty scrolls by torch stub. Sam rubbed bleary lids. "You'll ride with only 2 dragons. Kyril alone could frighten Dreadfort bannermen taunt to you." "Fright isn't enough if desperation drives them," Jon said, seating on a bench. "And Mirax can carry plague arrows if things sour." Sam smoothed parchment, straining across swollen spool. Well, I may come. My reading of these legends suggests the Night King's ice can linger in pockets. Hollows of silent frost, they called them. Dreadfort's vaults are rumored perilously cold. If there's residual shadow runes near Grain, I need to see them burned. Now. Jon's brow rose. "You've no sword. I have wits and dragonglass knives Donal tempered." "That's something." Sam's cheeks flushed beneath candle glare. "Besides, Gilly and little Sam still shelter at White Harbor. If we convoy Grain north, I might—" He trailed off. "We'll bring them through new gift lands soon," Jon promised. "But stay here. These scrolls matter more." Echoed how fused stone might brace the wall's wound. "Without that, winter's next storm ruins us." "Dander." Sam exhaled, shoulders sinking with relief too great to hide. "If you insist." The march south proved easier than feared. Kiral's shadow sweeping over earth scattered rebels before a sword needed drawing. At Dreadfort's storehouses, Lady Dustin's castellan yielded keys after witnessing Mirax melt a ballista to slag. They spent 2 days loading sledges with rye, barley, salted pork, and saltfish. Jon forbade pillage. Silver coins minted under Robb Stark's siege of Riverrun paid serfs for their labor, and promises of land north of the gift turned grudging fear into bright curiosity among small folk eager for new starts. But on the 3rd dawn, as sledges rolled out, Eliezer Thorne galloped hard from the north. A fresh fissure had broken the wall's western buttress, and half the shadow tower toppled into night-black abyss. No dead poured through. The necromancer's power was gone. But a swathi of farmland near Queen's Crown lay exposed to bitter winds cold enough to kill unprotected children within minutes. Worse, the river at Long Barrow diverted into the wall's cavity, instigating erosion that threatened to rend the whole structure from within. Jon loosed a low curse. "Ride. Send Raven, drag the grain behind. We'll buttress the wound with fused ice." Fused ice required dragon fire and stone dust baked together, cooled, then reheated and hammered to glass. Donal reckoned 3,000 wagon trips of rubble would cover even a third of the gap. I could seal the breach like a stone scab, he conceded, if we keep dragons working round the clock. So they returned to Queen's Crown, leaving a skeleton guard at the Dreadfort. Every able body now shoveled rock or sledged timber. Kyril and Mirax took turns slagging limestone piles into oozing slurries, while Frostfire darted inside, spewing narrow jets to weld seams. The process birthed pillars of shimmering blue-gray glass that cooled to near diamond hardness. The labor spanned 14 days. During that time, Lady Alysanne's bears patrolled the northern forest, intercepting ironborn raiders emboldened by rumor of a north ripe for plucking. They delivered 3 longship captains in chains. Jon spared them after extracting oaths to ferry food from Sisterton, where winter wheat still ripened under mild currents. Pragmatism over pride. Yet trouble bred within. Bolton prisoners grumbled under Baratheon overseers. Free folk brawled knights sworn to the Seven. Melisandre's nightly sermons about the Lord of Light tested northern patience used to silent gods. And Stannis' demands for fealty clashed with Robb Stark's rising legend. It could not hold forever. Word finally arrived. Robb had taken King's Landing after Tywin Lannister's sudden death by stroke. Cersei vanished. Joffrey's head piked during riots. Robb would march north in spring to reclaim Winterfell and greet his bannermen. Manderly's envoy announced the young wolf would welcome the Night's Watch's council, but knelt to no Southron king. Queen's Crown's hall erupted in 3 cheers. Stannis' mouth hardened to granite. That night he summoned Jon to his command tent. Maps lay curled at edges from candle heat. Frostfire dozed on a perch hammered to the center pole. "I fought beside you, bled beside you. Yet never once have you given me an answer, Stannis began, voice low. I offered Dragonstone, Storm's End, titles for your free folk host. Why refuse? Because crowns are snares, Jon said. I broke the Night King with wildlings, crows, and Southron men side by side. A single head beneath a single circlet cannot keep them, so when winter lifts. Stannis' eyes burned. Men bind to banners. Otherwise chaos devours peace. Then bind them to purpose, Jon countered. Rebuild the wall's gap as the first stone of a Dawnfort, a fortress kept not by black or king, but by all houses, all clans. Let the watch be its heart, the free folk its arms, and southern coin its mortar. Crown that purpose instead. Silence pulsed. Stannis stared at nightfall resting against tent wall. The sword's pale edge kissed candle glow, reflecting myriad colors like secrets glimpsed in ice. Words fine as maester's vellum, he said at last. Will you swear your dragons to my banners if I pledge my sigil to this Dawnfort? Dragons serve life, Jon answered. Swear your sigil to life's defense, not to my name, and their flame stands with you. Stannis studied Jon's face, perhaps weighing stubborn honor against daunting practicality. At last he removed his crowned stag brooch, the badge of Storm's End command, and set it on the map above Queen's Crown's mark. Then the crown stewards this Dawnfort with you, Lord Commander, until such day the realm seats a lord we both trust. Jon inclined his head. May that day come before frost claims us again. Winter leached colors from the world, but could not freeze the work. Dragons' roars echoed day and night. Fused ice columns stacked higher until sunlight bent through them and rainbows cast on snow. Children from both sides of the wall sledded down glass ramps, under watchful archers ready to loose at the faintest glimmer of runaway frost. When hunger gnawed, caravans from White Harbor arrived, escorted by ironborn captains who discovered profit grew faster than raids. Bowls of mussel stew simmered beside mammoth-bone cauldrons of venison. Laughter replaced wary stares. At solstice, the new bulwark stood 80 feet tall, nowhere near the wall's ancient height, but strong and glazed smooth as Kirill's talon. Donal predicted 2 more seasons until it rose full to the old parapet. In the meantime, towers made of 9th-century timber ringed its base, manned by mixed detachments, sworn to Jon's tri-sigil. A direwolf superimposed on the watch's winged sword and a stylized flame. One bitter evening Jon walked parapets still under scaffolds. Snow billowed off the step mountain of glass behind him, crystal dust dancing in lantern halos. Kirill glided above, Mirax tailing. Frostfire roosted on Jon's shoulder, larger now, heavy yet comforting. He paused where fused glass met ancient ice, laid gloved palm to seem warm under Dragonfire's memory. Within, no blue shimmer stirred. Only the faint echo of starlight trapped in minerals older than Empire. Footsteps behind. Benjen, arm healed enough for sword drills again. He joined Jon at the seam. Never thought I'd see a wall half made of starstone and half of dragon spit, he said, breath pluming. Nor I, Jon replied. Benjen's gaze drifted to campfires dotting snowfields. When Robb marches home, you'll counsel him to kneel to Stannis. I'll counsel him to kneel to Dawn, Jon said. Whether king or knight, Northman or free folk, no one stands above that. Benjen smiled ruefully. Words for songs, bards will feast on you. Let them. I'd rather their quills than more swords. Jon turned to him. Will you take Mirax south when Robb crosses the new gift? A dragon's shadow may hush Lannister loyalists still skittering. Meow. I'll fly, Benjen agreed. But there's talk among the watch. They say vows ended when the wall fell. Jon rested hand on Nightfall's hilt. Vows live in our bones, not in stones. I remain a crow, just one who carries flame. And king's blood, Benjen added quietly. Jon met his eyes. The secret of his birth had slipped from Sam's ravens, trickled through camp like sweet poison. Some bowed deeper, others eyed him with fear. He had not addressed it, letting rumors dilute until only actions mattered. Benjen clasped his shoulder. You wield that blood well. Don't let noblemen sharpen it for their own. He strode away, cloak whipping. Night deepened. John inhaled crisp air, letting starlight fill lungs. He pictured Arthur Dayne kneeling in that skull-lit tower long ago, promising protection, honor. Love, B.D. John whispered again, voice barely carried. I will not fail. Far north, auroras rippled. Ghostly serpents without the haunting blue of Walker witch-fires, only green and lilac weaving a tapestry across heavens. Dragons answered, Kirill roared, Mirax keened, Frostfire chirped exultation. Their cries married the wind, echoing across fused ice and timber towers. Beyond grain-loaded sleds creaking toward hungry hamlets, over dread forts surrendering walls, across mountain passes where banners of the young wolf hammered frost. The song lifted into boundless dark, heralding more winters, more dawns. Yet for this heartbeat, the realms of men breathed free beneath a new-forged bulwark fire bright against any night. And Jon Snow, no longer merely bastard of Winterfell, nor solely Lord Commander of a shattered order, but dawn's own sentinel, stood atop the glass seam and felt morning rise inside him. Steady, certain, enduring.